Hey fam, we're back with another banger. What if Naruto used Rossweisse to fulfill his inner desires? So before we start, if you are craving adult mature content, join my Patreon now, link are in the description box. Alright, enough talk, let's fire it up. It was a rainy night in the Japanese town of Kuo. Yet, despite the weather, there were still plenty of people out and about, embracing the nightlife the town had to offer. Whether it was one of the small clubs, one of the late-night arcades, or going to see the newest feature film of the month, it was simply another night to enjoy. However, the current buzz for the adults of Kuo was the opening night of the town's newest bar. Promotions for the bar had been handed out in the form of flyers during the final week of its construction, with everyone who brings a flyer getting a free shot, with the purchase of a cocktail, of course. Built near the poorer part of Kuo, Seventh Heaven Defini Telly stood out compared to the other buildings and structures of the town. Instead of looking modern or even Asian in design, the bar-restaurant had a Texan style and was primarily made of strong, resilient wood compared to the stone and plaster of commonplace buildings. It was also rather large, being 2 stories. The first story was the main hub, the bar and restaurant. Meanwhile, the second floor had fully furnished rooms and acted as sort of hotel for anyone needing a place to sleep. It was also available to anyone too inebriated to make it home safely. A line had already formed outside of the bar, with the people eagerly awaiting for the doors to open so that they could partake in food and drinks and get their first real impression of the potential new hotspot of Kuo. Their patience would soon be rewarded, for the doors opened and a young woman stepped out to greet them. She was a real beauty, as seen by many men and even a couple women blushing at the sight of her. Standing a little over 5 feet, she had long, dark brown hair that could have easily been mistaken for black if the light wasn't hitting it right. Said hair fell to just below her waist and was tied near the end to resemble a dolphin's tail. Her eyes were an exotically dark red and she wore a white tank top, a black, pleated mini skirt with a belt and suspenders, equally black shorts underneath, red and black gloves that extended to her elbows, and red-black boots with black stockings. With a gorgeous smile that was equally as inviting as it was lovely, she moved to the side and held the door open. With a barely noticeable accent, she announced, "Welcome to Seventh Heaven, everyone. Come on in." Some people cheered at this and everyone was ushered inside the bar. The restaurant itself was designed primarily with wooden tables, benches, and stools. At the back was the bar containing several drinks on display, and a small kitchen area off to the side that was seen via the serving window. A jukebox and pinball machine occupied one corner while a large television screen was located on the wall behind the bar. Finishing off the interior were neon-lit signs that read, "Texas, Pizza, and Draft Beer." All in all, the new place looked inviting and had plenty of delicious items that patrons were more than ready to partake in. Staring at the happy customers from the door, Tifa Lockhart had a proud smile on her face. So far, the opening night was going well, and she sent a mental thanks to her benefactor for helping her get the place built. She had wanted to run a bar for a couple years now, and when she brought up the notion, she was expecting to have to wait for longer than she actually did. 1 year. That's how long it took for her to get this place, and she was once again reminded how generous her boss was. When she had met him many years ago, and when he offered her a place in his group, she had been skeptical and dubious of his sincerity. But now, she was thinking that her doubts back then were unfounded. He was unwaveringly supportive of her and her fellow members, refusing to lord his position as the leader of their group over their heads. Sure, he asserted his authority here and there, but he never abused that authority. Truly, Naruto had proven to be a wonderful king to her. Hearing one of the bartenders call out to her, she mentally shook off her thoughts. ND smiled beautifully as she made her way behind the bar. She had work to do and customers to serve. Deep within the woods surrounding Kuo, some steam could be seen escaping into the air above the thick trees. If one were close enough to smell the steam, 9 out of 10 of them would have more than likely gagged and/or emptied the contents of their stomach onto the earth. The steam, and foul odor, was coming from a ridiculously oversized pumpkin that had its insides dug out so it could serve as a mixing pot. Sitting about a foot over a fire, a greenish-gray substance was seen bubbling to a boil. with each busted pocket of air releasing more of the vomit-inducing aroma into the air. The one responsible for the cooking foulness was a woman with strawberry blonde hair that was styled with a pair of braided tails. Though it didn't hold all her hair. Atop her head was a wide-rimmed hat that was pointed in the center with the tip of the point having a tail that turned from black to orange to yellow, as if it was the tip of a flame. The hat itself had a purple diamond with a pink slit surrounded by a yellow border, making it resemble an eye of sorts, while the bottom of its conical tip had upward points that looked like fangs in an underbite. As for her clothes, she wore black shoes with the front tips rising up and curling back, puffed black pants that had a section between the thighs and lower legs cut out, making it look like she also wore shorts, a black top that was basically a bra that somehow covered her breasts despite only being seen on her chest with nothing in the back, and a black-red neckpiece that was tied in the front. Her eyes were a bright green with black oval-shaped pupils surrounded by a faint black ring, with the green on the inside of the rings taking a darker shade of green. And those eyes portrayed nothing short of gleeful delight as she stirred her makeshift pot, mixing the things she was cooking while taking a nice, long whiff of the odor. "Oh, yeah," she sighed out blissfully. "That's the stuff. Gotta remember to thank Whiskers for fetching those ingredients for me." She chuckled as she remembered the look of reluctant agreement on Whiskers' face when she told him exactly what she needed for this brew she was concocting. But really, such a look was to be expected when one of the ingredients was sweat from an Oni demon. Seriously, though, she didn't expect him to go through with it, though. It cracked her up. Almost finished, she muttered to herself. Just need to add the porcupine quills. Grabbing the ingredient in question, she snapped the quills into smaller pieces before dropping them into the brew and mixing them in. When the coloration changed from a disgusting gray to a deep violet, she grinned widely and showed off her fanged teeth without a care. "That's the ticket," she exclaimed, walking away while her ladle gained a green glow outlining it as it kept stirring the brew. When she returned, she had a handful of NDED glass vials with corked openings in her arms. Still acting independently, the ladle scooped up some of the concoction and poured it into a vial before repeating the process until all 10 of them were filled. There was just enough, too, for the pumpkin pot had been scooped clean of the elixir with its innards being exposed. "Excellent. Can't wait to try these babies out." The woman eagerly read to nobody as she put the filled vials into a rucksack that she held on her back via straps. Nobody brews crazier shit than Medalia the Swamp Witch. With that proclamation came an almost mad ow as Medalia turned around and walked away from her campsite. Her destination, a certain bar owned by a fellow member of her King's group. The sounds of distant thunder caught the attention of a few people in Kuo, with some of them trying to locate the general direction it was coming from. It was a common thing people do when they hear the echoes that usually accompanied flashes of lightning. Thankfully, the town was only experiencing the rain, and the storm was a fair distance away from their home. Last time Kuo was hit by a major storm, it knocked out power to a large portion of the town. They didn't want to go through that hassle again. On a more positive note, depending on who you asked, the electric companies made plenty of commissions when the storm ended. Unknown to them, the lightning wasn't exactly natural. Sure, Kuo was experiencing rain, but it was nowhere near the level to be accompanied by thunder and lightning. No, this storm was actually caused by someone darting around the rain clouds as they made their way to the town. Another bolt of lightning raced across the sky, and if one were close enough, and observant enough to catch it, they would see that the tip of the bolt was outlining a woman. When the outline of electricity left her, one could see that she was a slender and well-endowed woman of average height. She had dark skin, golden eyes that gleamed with mischief, and dark violet hair that was waist-length and kept in a ponytail with chin-length bangs framing the sides of her face. Her attire consisted of a black backless and sleeveless undershirt, an orange overshirt with 2 white straps on each shoulder, a large beige sash around her waist, and black stretch pants with a pair of lightweight brown shoes. Finishing off the outfit were long beige wrist and leg warmers, each secured by bands. What really stood out for this woman was that she had feline ears and a cat's tail, each the color of yellow lightning and sparking with some restraint. Her grinning face also showed some fangs like a wild cat. She stood within a cloud, her feet creating small platforms of lightning that she stood on as if they were solid ground. Her arms were crossed as her tail swayed slowly and her cat ears twitched sporadically, with each twitch creating a small electric spark. Her gaze was focused on the rainy town before homing in on the neon sign of a certain bar. A bar that a friend of hers had recently built. Nodding to herself, she enshrouded her form in lightning once more before shooting across the cloudy night sky, darting from cloud to cloud as she made her way to the bar. With a flash, the lightning vanished, and from the shadows of an alley near 7th Heaven came a small black cat, golden eyes that gleamed in the nighttime city lights. The feline made its way to one of the open windows before leaping onto the windowsill and dropping into the bar unseen by anyone. Despite the numerous people walking around and enjoying their night, the cat maneuvered her way across the floor and snuck into the kitchen before leaping on an empty countertop. She observed the cooks preparing food for the hungry customers before spotting the owner of the bar stepping in. "Update on the veggie pizza?" she asked politely. "Another couple minutes, boss lady," the cook replied after checking on the order. "Thanks." She would have left the kitchen if she didn't spot the cat staring at her. Her dark red eyes rolled in amusement before she pointed to the ceiling and holding up 4 fingers. With her silent message given, she left the kitchen to return to the bar. As for the cat, she seemed to smirk before making her way out of the kitchen and sneaking upstairs. Approaching the room designated with the number 4, she looked around before confirming the coast was clear. In a brief flash of light, the woman from before, minus the feline features, was seen standing before the door. Smiling, she stepped inside and turned on the lights before making her way to the miniature fridge. Opening it, she smirked when she saw the container of chilled sake along with a note tied to it. Grabbing it, she read aloud. "Yoruichi, lay low until closing and I'll give you a second bottle. Don't want a bar fight to start over who can buy you a drink fastest. Tifa." This time, she was the one who rolled her eyes before balling up the note and tossing it in a bin before grabbing the sake bottle. Taking a sip, she sighed blissfully before lounging on the bed in the room to enjoy herself. It was still a couple hours till closing, after all. She had time to kill. "Boobs!" exclaimed an average-looking young man with brown hair and eyes. "Issei, please focus," sighed out a red-headed young woman, closing her blue-green eyes. She and her peerage were currently dealing with a stray devil by the name of Visor, who looked like an attractive nude woman from the waist up, but a disgusting monster from the waist down. Rias Grimoire, heiress of the Grimoire house, was hoping to use this extermination assignment to show the capabilities of a peerage to her newest pawn, Issei Hyodo. The group consisted of herself, Issei, Akino Himahima her queen, Kiba Yudo her knight, and Kaneko Tojo her rook. In the eyes of the public, they were known as the Occult Research Club, ORC for short, but they were in fact all devils, with Rias being the only pure BL. Ooded devil among them, while the rest were known as reincarnated devils thanks to becoming members of her peerage. As Rias took the time to explain what each evil piece gifted the recipient, nobody was aware of the 7th presence that was also inside the abandoned building. They observed the orc take care of Visor and render her from the overconfident traitor of her master to the pathetic being begging for death. "This is checkmate," Rias stated calmly, ending the stray devil with her power of destruction. The hidden person rolled their eyes at the lame pun, though they showed interest in the sacred gear on the left arm of Rias's perverted pawn. It looked like a simple red gauntlet with a green gem, but there was some potential hidden there, invisible to anyone who couldn't look deeper. When the orc left the building, a corner of the room gained some strange glowing cracks before shattering like glass and revealing the one who had been previously hidden. It was a rather petite young woman who had a closed pink parasol lazily resting on her right shoulder. She had long and thick hair that reached her waistline, half of it a brown color while the other half was pink with white streaks mixed in. Her eyes followed this same color scheme, with her left eye brown and her right eye being pink. With a blink, those eyes both became white and gleamed mischievously as they looked to the door. The orc exited. Her outfit consisted of a chocolate brown jacket that started just below her shoulders and above her chest and had a pink interior, 2 brown belt shoulder straps and twin gray button seams. Around her neck, she wore a gray scarf while her chest was covered by a white vest-styled top that is strapless and cropped, exposing her midriff, which was held closed by 3 large gray buttons. On her arms, she sported a pair of chocolate brown detached sleeves with puffy tops and a pink trim alongside a pair of white funnel-cuffed gloves with gray button detailing. She also wore White belted pants and black white spat-styled ankle boots with cutout detail just above the ankle. The back of her brown jacket had a small, coned ice cream keychain that was mostly concealed by her hair. Finishing off the look was a black bowler cap with a white feather tucked within its red band. She took a moment to look, observing the bigger mess the orc made of the place during their extermination of Visor. Strolling leisurely, she playfully kicked a small piece of rubble that ricocheted off the wall and headed for one of the windows. Upon breaking it, her eyes darted back to the door, and smirked when she heard the sound of someone approaching at rapid speed. Her eyes flashed pink in delight before her form faded from sight, just in time to avoid being spotted by Kiba, who had rushed back in with a sword drawn. "See anything?" The voice of Rias called to him as the orc made their way back inside. "Nothing, Bushu, I can't sense anything, either," her knight answered her. "Odd, are you sure you heard something?" "Kaneko." The shorter girl nodded once. "I heard glass breaking." Akino moved to the window and looked around both inside and out of the building. "Maybe an animal knocked something over," she suggested as she re-entered the building. "Maybe," Rias hesitantly agreed. Unseen by her, or anyone, the pink-eyed girl from before was standing directly in front of the red-headed devil. A confident, almost cocky smile was on her face as she remained obscured from sight, smell, or sense. All Rias had to do was take a step or two forward, and she'd be bumping her. "Let's go." It was probably nothing, Rias concluded, summoning a magic circle beneath everyone before they vanished. As soon as they left, she revealed herself as reality once again shattered like glass. She had her fun, and it was time to leave. Her pocket buzzed, and she pulled out a cell phone that had a message for her. Taking a second to read it, her smirk dropped to a soft smile before she pocketed the phone and strolled away. Time for the gang to get back together. "Thanks again for your business." Tifa bid the last of her customers that departed for home. Turning to her staff, she smiled brightly and stated, "I think we can call this opening night a major success. You all were amazing, and I can't thank you enough for helping me make such an impression on everyone who came." "We knew you were standing on a success, boss lady," one of her cooks replied, smirking at her. "We just wanted to take part." "I'm just glad I didn't make any mistakes with the drinks," a bartender sighed out in relief, a smile on her face. "Thanks again for the opportunity." The others also thanked Tifa before wishing her a good evening and leaving for home. With her staff gone, Tifa closed the doors and slowly walked through her bar. Her hand softly glided across a table as she strode past it, and she sat upon a stool that gave her a perfect view of the whole interior. A proud smile adorned her face, eased that her goal of being a bar owner had started off so well. The sound of someone coming downstairs caught her attention, and she turned to see that it was Yoruichi who had brought down the nearly finished bottle of sake. Smirking, she jiggled the bottle teasingly while Tifa rolled her eyes in amusement and stood up to go behind the bar. Setting a second bottle of sake on the counter, she PT digging around before pulling out a small glass that had a little bit of ice resting inside it. She turned to her shelves and reached up for one of the finer scotches before pouring a small serving. Making the signature scotch on the rocks. The doors to the bar opened, and the two women turned to see Medalia. "Sup, bitches," the swamp witch greeted. "Got any Everclear? You able to afford it?" Tifa fired back with a challenging smirk. Clicking her tongue in response, Medalia grumbled, "Stingy. Excuse me for having a business to run, now. I can't afford to give away too much, especially when it's ridiculously expensive." Medalia rolled her eyes. So, any idea where Whiskers is?" "Haven't seen him since I was sent to Kyoto," Yoruichi answered before turning to the door. "Hey, Neo." The petite woman smirked to them as she stepped into the bar. She took a moment to take in the interior before turning to Tifa and giving an almost mocking bow. "So glad you approve, Tifa sarcastically replied to Neo's critique of her place, moving to lock up the bar doors before turning back to the others. "Now that we're all here, we can get things moving." Grabbing the glass of scotch, she moved over to the pinball machine and reached behind it before inserting a key and twisting it. A part of the wall beside the pinball game went inward a few inches before sliding aside and revealing a hidden elevator to the ladies. Tifa stepped inside and waited for the others with an expectant look on her face. "Nice feature," Yoruichi commented with a small chuckle. "Was this your idea?" Quote. We need a place to meet without anyone noticing, so I offered this idea to Naruto. Tifa answered as Medalia and Neo joined them in the elevator. The bar owner pressed a button, which had the wall seal itself from the outside before the platform they were on began to descend. After a few moments moving down, a hidden bunker was revealed to them that they stepped into. The bunker was a small concrete room, which housed mapping and communication facilities, a computer hub, a television screen showing different angles of the bar above, and a small leather couch. At the center was a large table, where various plans were written on paper, as well as on the whiteboard nearby, though most of the plans differed from one another. The table had plenty of seats for them while the couch was occupied by someone that was slightly obscured from view. Beside the seated person was another young woman with beautiful silver hair that reached the backs of her knees and enticing aquamarine eyes. She wore a simple business suit that was a dark gray color, with a white undershirt and a pink ribbon in her silver tresses. She greeted the others with a kind smile as they took their seats, accepting the glass of scotch from Tifa before offering it to the seated individual. "Congratulations on your opening night, Tifa. I'm glad that your efforts paid off so well." Smiling back, she replied, "Thank you, Rossweisse. I was worried about how tonight would go, but I'm glad my worries weren't an issue." "That just shows how prepared you were for this night," the seated person noted, their voice that of a young man. Leaning forward so that they were more in the light, it was revealed that he was man nearing his 20s with wild, but short, blonde hair and deep blue eyes while whisker markings were seen adorning his cheeks. He wore a comfortable black suit that had the top mostly opened, a white button-down shirt with the top buttons undone, and a black tie loosely hanging around his neck. He ised his drink as both a thanks to her and as his own gesture of congratulations. "I'm glad I was a part of you realizing your own personal goal, Tifa." "Thank you, Naruto," she replied, her voice tck with emotion and her smile full of gratitude for him. "I don't think I'd have this bar for a long time if it wasn't for you." "Well," he began, leaning back on the couch and getting comfortable, "it was a win-win situation for us. You get the bar you've wanted, and we get a base for ourselves, one that is well hidden from prying eyes." The others nodded in agreement. "Now, how did everyone's assignments go?" "Got the elixirs made, Whiskers," Medalia replied, setting her rucksack on the table with a pleased grin. "Thanks again for nabbing those supplies I needed. I can't wait to see the results." He chuckled at her enthusiasm. "Neither can I. However, hopefully we won't be forced into a situation where we need to use them so soon." Yoruichi went next. "Yusaka agreed to speak with you. However, she's rather busy for the next month, so it won't be until then that you can schedule a meeting." "That's fine. I know how busy she can be, considering those radical human groups trying to expose yokai to the people of Kyoto." He then turned to the final member and asked, "Anything worth noting, Neo?" She hummed thoughtfully while tapping the bottom of her lip. After a moment, she signed out her findings to him. To which he frowned faintly. "So, the Grimoire girl is working with her pawn, and his sacred gear feels incomplete. Interesting, and you said it looks like a standard twice critical for the moment." Neo nodded once. Perhaps it isn't fully awakened yet. Keep an eye on him and any changes that might happen." "What about the Citri girl?" The mute girl gave a so-so motion with her hand before signing her report to him. "Nothing too interesting, then, alright, keep tabs on her group too. We never know what could happen with two heiresses occupying a single city. Also, I want everyone to keep an eye out for Fallen. I saw one walking around while trying to suppress his energy. They're up to something, and I want to know before Grimoire or Citri do." He received nods from the others before he gestured to the television screen. Static was seen for a moment before it showed the image of a rusted-looking chalice with dusty red gems on each cardinal point near the rim. "This is the next artifact that our group has been requested to retrieve. It is currently being held within the territory of the angels and guarded by some of their clergy. A group following someone named Saros made the request." "That's the Chalice of Beginnings," Medalia spoke up. "Know anything significant about it?" "Mainly rumors. Apparently, it could be used to revive some sort of progen. A tur god by using the blood of the 4 apostles that served them." "Don't know much else about it, Whiskers." He nodded in understanding. "Anyway, we've been offered a Substantial fee for bringing them this chalice. Considering the risk behind the heist involved. Should I look into it some more before we make any real plans, Naruto-kun? Rossweisse queried. Couldn't hurt, I'll wait until what eve. Are the fallen here in Kuo are doing to blow over before I start putting more focus on securing the chalice. In the meantime, I want Yoruichi to get in touch with our insider. See if they can shed some light on what they're planning. I can do that, the dark-skinned woman replied with an easygoing smile. And Tifa, Naruto continued, getting her attention, I'll be having a guest coming here to Kuo in about a day or two. We'll give them room 7 for their stay. I'll make sure it's nice and clean for their arrival, Tifa assured him. Room 7 was the nicest of all the rooms available on the second floor, being comparable to a suite when contrasted against the remaining 6 rooms. Medalia, I'll have you assist Rossweisse in looking into the Chalice of Beginnings more thoroughly. Also, see what information you can get on this progenitor god that it's rumored to bring back. Sounds like we'll be in for some fun nights, Senpai, teased the witch, making Rossweisse fight a faint blush. As for me, I'll poke the hornet's nest a bit, see how Grimoire and Citri react to foreign presences in their territory. For now, I'll say this meeting is over. Thanks for coming so promptly. You're our king, Foxy. Yoruichi waved off. Despite the free rein you give us, we still answer to you. She's right, Naruto. Besides, I'm indebted to you for how much you've done for me over the years, Tifa added, smiling gratefully. You got me free from my own leash, Whiskers, Medalia added, frowning at memories of the past. I'll follow you until the end. Neo simply smirked at him, her eyes were both pink with delight aimed toward him. And you already know about my feelings on the matter, Naruto-kun, Rossweisse rounded off, giving him a soft smile. He chuckled at their responses. Taking another sip of his scotch before setting it down. I couldn't have asked for a better peerage. Lifting his palm, the girl saw a lily flower with golden petals appear floating above his hand. His gaze grew distant, lost in memories of his past as they gazed upon the floating flower. I'm sure Lise would agree, he murmured somberly before returning the flower to his pocket dimension. Everything I do is in her memory, and I can only ask that you help me reach my goals as I help you reach yours. Giving him a shared look of pure determination, the members of Naruto Uzumaki's peerage nodded once to him. They would stay by his side until the end. The following morning found Naruto seated atop a random rooftop with one leg hanging off the edge while the other was propping his arm. His gaze was unfocused as he stared across the expanse of Kuo, looking towards the general direction of the school that both Grimoire and Citri were enrolled in. The sound of flapping caught his attention, finally breaking him from his slight trance as he turned to the source. Landing on a lightning rod near him was a large bird with dark blue and black plumage. Its eyes strangely had yellow pupils each while red markings were seen on its face, with the mouth being one upper beak and 2 lower ones forming a single mandible configuration. Griffin, the blonde greeted. Was wand, earring where you went, still playing the role of dumb blonde. The bird replied with some snark in his tone. Still don't understand why you feel the need to dye your hair. To honor the connection, the whiskered devil explained vaguely. What have you found during your travels? Got some crows in the city, Whisker Boy. They're occupying that abandoned church near the outskirts. Figures they'd commandeer that sort of place. We still don't know their purpose here, though. One of them killed a human before he was revived into Big Red's group, informed Griffin. That caught Naruto's interest. So, the poor boy didn't get a choice in the matter, did he? Typical scenario for many of the peerage members run by noble families. Griffin scoffed alongside him, looking across the city just as Naruto did. Why set up shop here? Anyway, Grimoire and Citri hide our power with their sheer presence. So long as we don't cause trouble, we can blend in easily. I've seen Big Red's little peerage when Cream Girl was having her fun. Not impressed with that menagerie of misfits. Naruto chuckled. You speak as if my peerage isn't full of misfits. Griffin chuckled with him before noting that Naruto was holding a familiar flower. Still stuck in the past, kid. You could say that, Naruto replied softly, losing himself to his memories. It's been so long now since that day, when I was pulled from my darkness. The underworld town of Shoal was one of the poorer settlements that were looked after by those serving House Citri. It had a reputation for being a tough place to live in, with the denizens preferring to look after themselves than try and help others. Strolling down one of the streets was a young woman with golden blonde hair that reached just below her waist and equally gold eyes. She had a blue ribbon tied into a makeshift bow near the top of her head and was dressed in dark brown shoes, a dress in a lighter brown shade, and a blue-white shirt with frills and blue straps over it. Finishing off her appearance were her pointed ears and her tail, which was reminiscent of a lion's. She was walking with a small smile upon her face as a basket full of golden lilies had the strap resting on her arm. As she passed others, she offered them a flower for a ridiculously cheap price, nowhere near enough to make a living for herself. She was met with derision for her pricing. But she would always respond with a kind-hearted smile and a repeated offer of a flower. Few ever bought any. Despite her questionable choice in career, she was always happy when someone did buy a flower. She worked hard planting and gardening them, hoping to have fields of them spread across the netherworld someday so that everyone could appreciate their beauty. After getting denied again, she made her way past an alley of the city before stopping when she spotted something. Slowly, she made her way down the dark passageway before she reached the end. The sight before her made her golden eyes soften with somberness and pity. Sitting in a makeshift home of cardboard boxes was a young boy with untamed white hair and dull blue eyes with whisker markings on his cheeks. Dressed in rags and covered in grime and dirt, he looked every bit the sad child she was witnessing before her. Casting a glance behind her, she noted how nobody else even bothered to look towards his direction and sighed softly. Once again, she found herself bothered by the heritage of her mother and how selfish devils appeared to act. She was pleased she took after her late father in terms of ideals and personality. Stepping closer to the boy, she crouched down and offered him a hand with a gentle smile on her face. His near-dead blue eyes stayed upon the ground, his gaze unfocused for a few moments before slowly raising to the hand offered to him. His eyes then slowly moved to her smiling face, seeing a desire to help in her golden orbs. He had seen such looks before, only to be deceived and hurt in the end. So, expecting no different, he returned his gaze to the ground and ignored the woman before him. However, when that hand reached forward and gently rested against his cheek, he flinched and darted his gaze to meet hers with surprise. Upon matching her stare, he saw that her desire to help was still there, but there was also a strong measure of sympathy being aimed at him. She said nothing, letting her actions and expression speak for her. When he closed his eyes and raised his arm, he missed how her smile brightened at his acceptance. She removed her hand from his face and tenderly grabbed his own, lifting him up and guiding him slowly through the city streets to her small home near the outskirts that was surrounded by the same golden lilies she had been attempting to sell. He paid no real mind to the flowers, instead being ushered into the home, and led to a washroom. After an uncomfortable period of time spent with her washing him and giving him some slightly oversized clothes, he was led to a kitchen and offered a seat before she moved away only to bring forth a small pot full of slightly warm stew. He watched her fill 2 bowls before offering him the one that had a bigger serving and setting it before him. It was too good to be true, and he frowned at her for playing such cruel games on him. However, that frown died when she gave him a gentle smile and placed a hand upon his shoulder. Unexpectedly, she pulled him into a warm embrace that caused him to stiffen up before she finally spoke to him. "It's all right, you're home, now." The sincerity in her voice, the warmth of her embrace, and the feeling of acceptance flooding into him were too much for the boy to handle, and so he gave in and hugged her back as he wept into embrace. She said nothing else and simply held him, being an emotional pillar for him to lean on. After a while, she softly asked, "What's your name?" He pulled back and wiped away his lingering tears before offering her a faint smile full of rekindled hope. "I'm Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki." She smiled warmly and moved her hand from his shoulder to the top of his head. "That's a wonderful name. My name is Lizarota, but you can call me Liz or Nate-chan from now on." "Naruto," Liz admonished softly, looking at the food in the second-hand fridge she was positive wasn't there that morning. "What have I told you about stealing?" It had been a few years since she had adopted him into her life as her younger brother. He had grown into the clothes she had given him the day they met, filling out the simple black shirt and brown pants with his now healthier weight. "But Nate-chan," he tried to argue, looking annoyed. That vendor was overcharging you for the food you bought a few days ago. He was charging twice as much as he was charging others. I was just taking what was owed to us. The blonde young woman sighed at his answer. I don't care about that, Naruto. When you steal, you become a thief, and when you're a thief nobody can trust you. Did you not stop and think about what your actions would create in the end? Create, he repeated. Yes. By this point, everyone in Seoul knows that you and I are living together. If you go around stealing things as a means of comeuppance or justice, people will label you a thief. And if that happens, then they will distrust both of us. Why would they distrust you? You're the nicest person in the city. She smiled gently at the compliment. Because they'd see me as housing a thief. He winced at that before sighing in defeat. Okay, I won't steal anymore. Keeping her smile, she placed her hand upon his head and ruffled his hair affectionately. Good boy, now, wash up for dinner. He nodded with an embarrassed blush, walking off to the washroom. I won't steal, he muttered to himself with a frown. Unless there's no other choice. A now 14 years old Naruto was seen going through some basic combat patterns illustrated from a scroll gifted to him by Lise. Her father, a lion demon, developed a fighting style that many demons and devils would scoff at due to the ideal behind it, but Naruto was inspired to learn it after hearing stories about the man and his character. A demon who idealized strength through understanding and the removal of what made them demons, wickedness and darkness, being replaced by goodness and light. It was obvious that, despite being both a demon and a devil, Liserota had inherited her father's outlook on life as well as his ideals. Sadly, for her, he had died before he could pass on his skills and teachings to a worthy successor. Naruto hoped to prove himself worthy of becoming that person, in her eyes, at least. She had pulled him from his personal darkness, offered him a home and a second chance at life. He would do anything, to prove that she had made the right decision and make her proud. She was his sister, she was his family, she was his light. Despite being exhausted, he kept at it with his exercises and training. He had to get stronger. Keep pushing himself towards the goal he had set for himself. The ideals of Lise and her father would not be scoffed at if he had anything to say about it. As training went late in the afternoon, he started to grow concerned. Lise was usually home by this time and was never late. Worried about her, he put away the training supplies and went into the city to find her. What he stumbled upon was the sight of a rally being headed by the one who overlooked Seoul, a pseudo-mayor of sorts. Many of the citizens believed the man was corrupt, despite serving the family that the current Leviathan was from. Rumors had secretly spread about how he was taking bribes and how some of the people had been disappearing as of late. My fair people, the man spoke up with a smile as genuine as cubic zirconia. I promise you that we will find the ones who have abducted our missing citizens. And once we find them, the culprits will be punished, and justice will be served. I promise you in the name of House Citri. Practically nobody voiced any eagerness about the man's promise, with many of them grumbling about the pointlessness of the man's speech. Naruto ignored it all as he searched for any sign of his sister. Passing through various alleyways and visiting the more popular locations where she sold her flowers, he found nothing indicating she was there. Thinking he must have missed her, he went home with notable concern on his face. He passed the alley where they first met and stopped, remembering that day with a fond smile. Stepping into the alley, he approached where He once called home as his mind replayed the event with mental images taking place before him. Abruptly, the visions broke apart when he saw a familiar blue ribbon on the ground and poorly covered up signs of a struggle. Fear gripped his heart, and he scowled at the ribbon before sniffing it thoroughly. When he got a scent, his whisker markings deepened from thin lines to jagged scars while his blue eyes changed to crimson red with black slit pupils. He rushed after the scent, following the trail made by it and being led to the seedier part of the city. Unsurprisingly, this part of the city was far from the so-called mayor's office, and he hid behind some rotting crates as he took note of some unknown devils speaking privately with the man. I hope your master will appreciate the haul you got from my fair city. The man said with a chuckle. I'm sure a few of them will catch his eye. And you're sure the Citri family won't become aware of this? One of the men asked. Please. I was once offered a position as pawn for Lady Seraphal. I only declined because I don't like the idea of being under someone, and I saw more potential lounging on the back of this pathetic place. I may H. Avenue missed out on a prestigious position, but I'm still living like a king. Naruto growled quietly at this before his eyes widened at the sight of Lise, tied up and unconscious alongside other women and some children he had seen before. Just as he was about to rush in and try to save her, the men and their captives vanished in a magic circle, leaving the overseer of Shoal alone with a single black briefcase. Pure, unfiltered rage filled him to the brim, and he vanished from sight in a blur of deep violet. In the next moment, he had the man by the throat and slammed into the wall with him choking in shock at what happened. Where are they? He ground out as his teeth sharpened to wicked fangs that could rend into anything. I don't know. The man gasped out, struggling to breathe through the iron grip on his throat. They never mentioned anything. My sister was one of their captives. You let them take her away. Regaining some defiant fire, the man gave Naruto a condescending glance. And if I did, you people only make this place lose value. I'm sick of overseeing scraps when I deserve much more. I was a candidate of Leviathan's peerage, and yet I'm stuck taking care of worthless shit. Rage evolved into something indescribable, and the man realized he had said too much. With a snarl befitting a beast, Naruto pulled his hand away and tore out the man's throat with his new claws. As if the weather hoped to portray how he was feeling, a storm of rain and lightning started as soon as the dead body collided with the ground and blood began to pool around it. Fucking bastard, fucking devils, fucking nobles treating us like this. He sneered. You, a peerage candidate. Apparently, the nobles have an eye for shit liquors if that's the case. Hoping to find any sign of Lise and where she could have been taken to, he sank to his knees when nothing was found. Rain poured relentlessly upon him, and each flash of lightning showcased his shadow as he gave a heartbroken roar that echoed across the city. And to all who heard it, they wondered who would become a victim of such a beast so full of fury. Almost half a year had been spent traveling the netherworld and searching for Liserota. Naruto had packed everything he could, including the teachings Lise had saved from her father, and set off in search of his sister. The first 2 months had been his most determined. Searching any city or settlement he passed through and asking anyone willing to listen if they had seen any sign of her. Nothing. The next 3 months had been filled with desperation, and he wound up shaking people down instead of simply asking them. Going back to what he did when he was younger, he snuck into buildings that held various files on the cities in question and neighboring settlements. Still nothing. This last month had him losing hope as he neared the capital of the netherworld. It was here that the most noble of the noble houses resided as well as the 4 Satans, with one such Satan being his next target. If there was anyone who could have the means of helping him find Lise, it would be the creator of the evil pieces and the peerage system, Ajuka Beelzebub. Hopefully, he would finally find something. It was late in the evening when Naruto decided to act. Using magic to change his appearance, he had his hair changed to ebon black and turn wilder as if he were more animal than man. His eyes were red, and his whisker markings looked jagged, though his face was obscured by a porcelain mask that looked like a kitsune with 3 eyes with ringed markings. For his attire, he wore a dark bluish-gray robe with gray lining and a fur collar, and a tattered grayish-blue cape emblazoned with an emblem unknown to many of the devils, a mandala comprised of 9 red-ish brown circles of varying sizes atop a larger greenish-gray circle. Beneath it all, he wore no shirt, fingerless opera-length black gloves wrapped in studded reddish-brown leather straps, baggy black pants, and reddish-brown sandals. He had spent a few days scoping around the capital and locating Beelzebub's laboratory. Under the guise of applying for a servant position of the man's manor, he had used his position to scout out the best way to get into the lab. It was time-consuming, but a necessary sacrifice if it meant he could obtain the means of finding Lise. Having vaguely memorized the patrol pattern of the evening guards, he snuck onto the grounds of the manor and slipped past the security. Using a ward that he had purchased in another city, his energy signature had been reduced to practically nothing, making him nearly undetectable to those trying to sense for an intruder. Only someone with incredible control over their senses would feel his presence. Unfortunately, the lab was being guarded by 2 devils. Cursing mentally, he reached into a pouch hidden behind him and pulled out 2 metal needles that had a clear liquid dripping from them. It was a venom that would knock out whoever was struck by it. And Naruto put it to use by throwing the needles at the two guards. While initially on alert from the hidden attack, they quickly started to lose their battle with consciousness and fell over. Blurring into sight between them, Naruto managed to catch them before their fall could create any noise. Gently, he set them both down and crept into the laboratory. Unknown to him, he had been detected long before he had gotten this far, and the one who noticed him had calmly followed the young man into the lab. Back with Naruto, he carefully walked through the laboratory of Beelzebub. Impressed with the creations and ideas he had witnessed while looking for something to help him. It was when he saw the storage for the man's files that hope sparked within him again. He moved over to them, pilfering through them desperately in search of anything concerning the unknown group who had kidnapped Lise and the others. Upon finding nothing, he almost gave into his building frustration. But he restrained himself because he didn't want to be discovered. Angrily putting everything back, he stood up and started looking around again. If there was nothing on file, then maybe he could find some invention or item that could help locate her energy. Deeper and deeper into the lab he went, passing by older projects that had been gathering dust over the years. It soon got so cluttered that he had to struggle to squeeze through some spots. But when he got even deeper, a strange blue light hidden by more junk caught his attention. He made his way through, hoping to see what it was. And came across the sight of a katana floating in suspended animation while being snapped in two at the middle of the blade. The weapon was beautifully crafted despite being broken, and the golden black handle wrapped in white cloth gave it an almost regal look while the sheath contrasted the brighter colors by being an ebon black with a midnight blue tassel. What really got Naruto's attention, however, was the latent power calmly emitting from the broken weapon. Part of him felt a pull towards the sword, as if it were calling out to him. He frowned behind his mask at this, trying to ignore it in favor of resuming his search. When he still found nothing, he was sorely tempted to tear the lab apart in his growing rage. If only he had more power. The strength to protect Lise from what had happened to her. Might controlled everything, right? Then was the fact he failed because he didn't have the necessary might. Unseen by him, but noticed by his secret observer, the sword pulsed once under the blue light of its suspension, with both halves inching together for a moment before resuming their previous distance. He took a few deep breaths before sighing in defeat, grief filling his heart as he removed his mask and let the magic hiding his features drop. He didn't care anymore, for he had lost his light, his reason for trying so hard. Without Lise, he felt as if life had no more meaning. Dropping the mask, he prepared to leave before he noticed something he hadn't before. There, on a lab table cluttered with old projects, was half a chess set, all 16 pieces of a single side. Recalling that the scum who had so casually given Lise away bragged how he was offered the position of a pawn, Naruto assumed that this was the fabled evil piece set that noble families used to build peerages. His unnoticed observer watched him approach the unassigned evil pieces, curious about what would happen. Honestly, he had forgotten that there was an old set buried so deep within the clutter of the laboratory, so he was surprised that the would-be thief had been lucky enough to find them. Not to mention how that sword reacted to him. Naruto picked up the case holding the pieces, grabbing the king and turning it over in his hand. How do these things work, anyway? He muttered to himself before deciding to just wing it and inject some of his power into the piece. This proved to be the right call, for the king lit up a deep violet color before it was absorbed into Naruto's body. Upon absorption, the remaining 15 pieces lit up the same shade before. The glow faded and the pieces held archaic markings in the same dark violet shade. However, the queen piece had changed, becoming a strange shape that confused Naruto before he mentally waved it off. And sent the pieces into a personal subspace. Incredible, a voice gasped out, making Naruto tense before turning to face them with his body ready to react to a hostile presence. To his shock, the OWNER of the voice was the last person he wanted to see in this place. Lord Beelzebub, he choked out, fearing for his life. He had been caught in his natural look by the very man whose lab he had snuck into. He was in such deep shit. Ignoring the shock, the man started to circle the white-haired young man before him. You managed to get so far into my lab and bind yourself to an evil piece set, and on top of that, You received a mutated queen. Other devils have gotten mutated pieces before, but never have I seen the piece in question be the second in command. Your potential must be astonishing. Ah, potential, he repeated awkwardly. No offense, but shouldn't you be more upset that I even snuck into your lab in the first place? Bygones. I'll just consider it someone testing my accuracy and giving me ideas to close the gaps. What I'm more interested in is you, my dear boy. It's safe to say that you're not a noble born, but I never imagined someone not from one of the 72 pillars to have your kind of potential. Unless. Here, the man turned his attention to the broken katana with Naruto nervously looking as well. It couldn't be, but it is possible, to think that. Okay. He's muttering to himself like a cliché mad scientist now, Naruto thought in deadpan before recoiling when the green-haired man suddenly broke into laughter. And, he's lost it. It all makes sense now. Ijuka declared with a laugh. That's what caused it. Ah. As if remembering that Naruto was there, the man blinked once before turning to him. You're still here. I would have thought you'd use the opportunity to escape. Seriously. The Uzumaki deadpanned. Me escape from you. Anything's possible. You did sneak into my lab, after all, the man argued calmly, giving him an amused smirk. At any rate, I'll give you some time to get away before I raise the alarm. You deserve it for making it this far and for obtaining your own evil set. Blue eyes blinked in shock. You're serious, he noted after a moment to go over what had been offered to him. At the man's nod, he couldn't help asking, but why? Truthfully, things have been getting pretty stale lately. You sneaking into here was the most interesting thing to happen for a while now. He approached the machine suspending the sword and pressed a few keys. Do me a favor and raise your power, would you? Why? Naruto asked with suspicion. I want to test something. If you do, I'll increase the time of your head start, he offered. TCH, way to dangle a carrot, he muttered before complying with the, in his opinion, odd Satan. Taking a breath, he closed his eyes and focused on his inner energy and spiked it, the sudden increase in output burning away the ward that he had placed upon himself earlier. A faint outline, of dark violet energy covered his form before it changed to a flickering aura that went from violet to blue. Due to having his eyes closed, he wasn't aware of the broken sword resonating with his energy. Beelzebub was, though, and he grinned as the weapon lined itself up and slammed together before becoming fully repaired in a flash of light. It then flew toward Naruto, who snapped his eyes open, just in time to grasp the handle and take a ready stance as if on instinct. When the rush of adrenaline faded, he took a breath before looking at the restored blade in his hand. What just? He tried to ask, unable to find the words. As I suspected, Ijuka stated, grabbing the sheath for the sword and offering it to the young man before him. That sword is linked to you, waiting for you to come and restore it. It belonged to someone linked to your ancestry, but I'll let you discover just what that link is. For now, keep it. It was never mine to keep anyway, and having it collect dust down here would only be a disservice to you and the original owner. He stared at the offered sheath before slowly reaching his left hand to take it, placing the sword within it a few seconds later before it vanished in a blue flash against his left palm. Awkwardly, he reached down and grabbed his discarded mask before regarding the Satan. You're not like how I thought someone in your position would be, he admitted. I thought all nobles were the same and lived off the backs of the lower classes, treating us like our lives were insignificant. Sadly, many nobles are like that, Ijuka confessed with a frown. We Satans are hoping to change that, but it's almost like something needs to set off a spark within the people. He smirked knowingly and finished, I wonder where such a spark could come from. Getting the message, Naruto frowned for a moment before nodding. I get it, but I need your help, sir. Oh, I assume it has something to do with you searching through my files like a man dying of thirst. Nodding, Naruto replied, I was hoping to find the whereabouts of the people who took away someone I loved. She took me in and became family to me. I can't imagine life without her. If you were to find her, I'd be indebted to you, sir. Ijuka hummed thoughtfully at that. Where did you come from, kid? Shoal. He winced at that. Sarah isn't happy with that place at the moment, He found out some dirty secrets about the old overseer. He was the one who gave my sister away as if she were a gift to the people who took her. Ripping out his throat barely helped me keep from flying into a rage. Naruto confessed with a hateful expression. Just thinking of that bastard got him riled up. I'll look into it with Serafal. You have my word, Beelzebub promised. However, you now have a role to play, the criminal turned rebel who challenged the status quo. Naruto nodded and replaced the mask upon his face. Making his way out of the lab, he stopped and looked over his shoulder at the man. When you spread the word about me, I have the perfect title, sir. And that would be? Ijuka asked with a smirk. Smirking behind his mask, he finished, tell them you were visited by the King of Thieves. With that, he vanished in a dark violet flash, leaving an amused Satan chuckling at his exit. He's right. That is the perfect title. Naruto sighed at the memory. I still can't believe Beelzebub let me go. He ever get back to you about her? Griffin asked. No, but that might be because I haven't been in touch with the netherworld since I left, he replied, reaching to his side and petting the large, pitch-black panther beside him. The beast purred at his touch while the stray red markings flowed like water through its fur. Hey, Furball is like a damn kitten in your hand, kid, Griffin teased. Earning a low growl from the panther. Easy, Shadow, Naruto ordered softly before standing up. At any rate, I have a job to do. Time to poke the hornet's nest. Holding up his left hand. Both Griffin and Shadow disappeared in flashes of darkness before reforming into a sheathed katana. Upon the appearance of the weapon, Naruto's golden blonde hair flashed to a white color for a moment before returning to blonde. In another flash of darkness, the sword disappeared from sight before Naruto himself left in a dark violet flash. As he said, he had a job to do. As Grimori sighed as she sat through another day of lessons at Kuo Academy. While she enjoyed staying in the human realm, going through school was rather tedious. Granted, she knew that an education was important. But she wished she could skip the boring parts and just know what she needed to. She chuckled internally, feeling that her thoughts and gripes were shared by a great deal of humans going through the education system. Giving a quick glance to the instructor, she noted that their back was turned while multiple students were using the opportunity to lean over and converse with their friends. Humans truly were fascinating to her, with their different cultures and beliefs both dividing and uniting the world they lived in. They had hidden potential that most never realized while the EU that did squandered it most of the time. She was envious of them at times, for many of them didn't have to bear the weight of family expectations or arranged marriages that felt like a life sentence, rather than a joyous union of two people in love. Enrius would never have any love for Riser Phoenix. The pompous prick was exceedingly arrogant, looking down on most people unless they are more powerful or influential than himself. He was a braggart with an undeserved pride that abused the inherent power his blood gifted him. Enrius was forced into an arranged marriage with him that she was desperately trying to break out of. She was running out of time, but she couldn't put all her focus on the issue since she had a new pawn to train and some stray fallen angels poking around in her shared territory. She was broken from her thoughts when a dense pressure slammed down on the academy, making her gasp in shock while her classmates and teacher were rendered near catatonic. Standing with considerable effort, something that alarmed her, she rushed out of the classroom as fast as she could and joined up with her peerage as well as Sona Citri in her peerage. What's happening? Issei cried out in near panic. Having never experienced this ominous level of power weighing down on them before. I can't say for certain, Hyodo-san, Sona confessed as the two peerages made their way to the entrance of the academy. Where the power was coming from. But be prepared for anything. The other devils nodded in agreement while the newest pawn swallowed the lump in his throat and anxiously brought out his sacred gear. When they burst through the doors to the outside, they say a figure covered in a tattered cloak that shrouded their face save for their mouth. The skin around their mouth looked cracked and decayed, making them wonder if an undead being had come to Kuo. Beneath their cloak were dark clothes that looked equally as tattered while their left hand gripped the pommel of a sheathed sword. Their form leaning heavily on the weapon as if it were a crutch holding them up from falling. Based on the slightly larger frame, they assumed that the person before them was male. They faced the cloaked figure with tensed bodies, waiting to see what they would do. All was silent, save for the rasped breaths coming from him. Devils, the man breathed out, his voice in by a second that sounded more distorted, echoing whatever he said. Rias shivered at the latent power in the man's dual-toned voice, feeling it dwarf her own despite how he looked ready to keel over and die. Masking her anxiety, she stepped forward alongside Sona, the two of them choosing to try and be diplomatic. "You're trespassing on the conjoined territory of the Citri and Grimoire families," Sona spoke up sternly. Masking her own nervousness towards the situation. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" The man didn't answer, just giving more raspy breaths before slowly turning his hooded head toward the Citri heiress. "Citri," he choked out before gagging and erupting into a fit of coughs, his grip on his sword tightening as he struggled to stay on his feet. The sudden bout of coughs startled the two heiresses, and they stepped back alarmed as the man's power slowly started to rise. Gathering their own power, the many devils of Kuo readied themselves for a fight, but he surprised them all again when he vanished from sight in a dark flash. And just as he vanished, so too did the ambient feeling of oppression in the air, the openness of Kuo returning to them and allowing them to exhale the tensed breath they had been holding in. The sudden release of tension brought many of the two peerages to the ground, the adrenaline leaving them and rendering their bodies exhausted. Issei summed up what everyone was thinking with an eloquent exclamation. What the fuck was that? Managing to stay on her feet, though she desperately wished to sit, Rias whispered out, "I have no idea." Another spike of power echoed from somewhere else in Kuo, causing everyone to struggle back to their feet and rush to its location. "I forgot how fun this was," Naruto mused with a chuckle. Enjoying an ice cream cone with his pawn. Neo, who had her own triple scoop, smirked at her king knowingly, earning another chuckle from him. Yeah, rub it in, why don't you?" he joked, knowing what she was teasing him about. Many times, Neo would try and get Naruto to join her for pulling some pranks on unsuspecting suckers in the city. Each time, he would decline joining her and promise to join her another time. But he never found the time with current events. He was glad he hadn't disappointed her with another denial of her request. Her sacred gear, House of Glass, made the trick he was pulling on the two peerages child's play. True, he was standing in front of them, but Neo added the little touches that made him look like the decaying man the two heiresses saw trespassing in their territory. "Here they come," he spoke up, having finished his treat while Neo snapped her fingers and surrounded him in a translucent cube of solid glass. His form faded like a mirage bef. Or the disguise took his place and the cube shattered into dust. The two shared a smirk before Neo faded from sight. Just in time too, for the devils had arrived via transportation magic that bore their family crests in their designs. Rias wasted no time and fired a destruction orb at him while Kiba and Tomo Meguri, Sona's knight, rushed him from behind the attack. Naruto, still playing the part, hacked a cough before pulling out his sword. With a single swipe, he bisected the destruction orb before repositioning the blade to catch the twin sword swings from the two knights. With ease, he deflected them while sending them sprawling back with the force of his swing. "Foolishness," he rasped out, giving another cough immediately after. Rushing in blind, all you can do." Akeno and Sona's bishops, Momo Hanakai and Rei Kusaka, gathered elemental magic and unleashed it upon Naruto, who had sheathed his sword and absorbed the magic through the scabbard, which started sparking. With dark violet lightning as Kaneko and Sona's rook, Tsubasa Yura, tried to attack him from both sides. Naruto slammed the butt of the scabbard on the ground, unleashing the pent-up magical energy. In a burst of power that knocked both girls off their feet and sent them crashing through some trees. From the shadows of his cowl, Naruto smirked when some of the trees that fell revealed the abandoned church that resided within Kuo's borders. Standing up straighter than his disguise had done in their presence, Naruto silently had Neo adjust the illusion over him so that the tattered clothes aired themselves and the broken skin smoothed to a healthy shade. His cloak was still tattered, but now he didn't look like he was on death's doorstep. "HMPH, he scoffed, the distorted voice fading and making him sound normal. "How disappointing. Is this all the peerages of Grimoire and Citri can do? No wonder the crows were so confident to invade your territory." Rias and Sona stilled at that, acking a glance at the abandoned church in the distance. It was Sona who figured it out first. "You led us here, to show us where the fallen are hiding when not roaming Kuo's streets." "Of course. Figured you should know what barks at your door, and what better way than by barking myself." "Who are you?" Rias ordered, glaring at him. For now. Not the one you should be worried about. After all, I wasn't the one who killed a human and left him at the mercy of a devil princess, he taunted smoothly before vanishing from their sights once more in a dark flash. Issei cringed at having the reminder of his death thrown back in his face while Rias grit her teeth at what the unknown man was accusing her of in his taunt. She wouldn't let his words get to her, though. Not when they needed to figure out why fallen angels were setting up shop in devil territory during a universally respected ceasefire between the three factions. Despite her thoughts to the contrary, his words did get to her deep down. Later that evening, after Seventh Heaven closed for the night, Naruto was seen sitting at the bar while Tifa wiped the glasses dry. So, what was your impression of the heiresses, Naruto? They don't stack up. Citri seems more level-headed than Grimoire, but I think that may be because she isn't distracted by family affairs. Grimoire, on the other hand, is busy raising up a new pawn while trying to deal with her arrangement with the Phoenix house. You think if she wasn't so worried about that, her peerage would be more flushed out? Possibly. Though, both of them have a sibling in a seat of higher power. And based on reports from our insider, those two siblings are rather doting of their younger sisters. To the point of it being embarrassing to witness, it seems. And because of their doting, Citri-san and Grimoire-san haven't had any real-life experience with issues that devils face, Tifa concluded. Exactly, Naruto confirmed before perking up at a small spike of magic. He briefly pulsed his own power, prompting a rune circle to appear on the floor of the place. From the rune circle, a man appeared. He wore a knee-length dark blue blazer with a lighter blue dress shirt, a black waistcoat, and a red tie. For bottoms, he wore faded purple slacks and black dress shoes. His hair was black with golden bangs while his eyes were a reddish-purple color. Damn, he began, sounding impressed. Nice place you set up here, kid. It wasn't me, Naruto shot down, nodding his head to Tifa. I gave my rook here total control for the design of this place. It was her goal, after all. Tifa looked to be focusing on her task of wiping glasses, but one could spot a faint blush upon her cheeks at her king's words and the small smile on her lips. Hiding in plain sight, are we? The man asked rhetorically as he joined Naruto at the bar. May I? Naruto chuckled and shook his head. Don't ask me. I'm not the owner here. Azazel, leader of the Grigori, rolled his eyes before turning to Tifa. Got any whiskey? Quote. Tifa smirked and set down a few different bottles on the bar. Pick your poison, she stated. Ooh, so many choices, the fallen angel grumbled before he shrugged. You know what? Surprise me. Coming up, Tifa declared confidently, grabbing the bottles and replacing them on the shelves save for one. She then poured 2 ounces of the chosen whiskey in a glass of ice alongside an ounce of sweet vermouth and 2 dashes of aromatic bitters. Taking a spoon, she stirred the ingredients thoroughly before straining them in a separate glass before garnishing it with 2 cherries on a stick that rested on the rim of the glass. With ease, she then had the cocktail slide across the bar top and stop perfectly in front of Azazel. Enjoy your Manhattan, she bid. As she set to cleaning the utensils used for the drink, she caught Naruto smiling at her and blushed again, pleased to see him gazing at her so fondly. Taking a sip, Azazel sighed happily at the taste, dancing across his tongue and down his throat. Can't beat the classics, he mused before turning to the whiskered blonde. Whatcha doing here anyway, kid? You know this area is taken, right? Oh, I know. But it's not like I'm causing problems, Naruto waved off before smirking. To the contrary, I'm helping solve some problems for the 2 little heiresses, particularly the one concerning a few possible strays of yours. Looks like some of your subordinates veered off from your flock. Azazel hummed thoughtfully at that. I may have sent some of them here to keep an eye on someone. I wanted to know if my hunch about their sacred gear was right. Did you authorize killing the kid? The whiskered devil questioned, earning a look from the fallen. I'll take that as a no. One of them killed a human. Only for him to be reincarnated in Grimoire's peerage as her newest pawn. My own pawn informed me that it looks like he has a twice critical, but she believes there's more to it than that. I see. Something you want to share. Taking another sip of his drink, the Grigori leader replied, I have a strong feeling that Kuo houses the newest Red Dragon Emperor. Boosted gear. Naru. To asked in slight surprise before shaking his head. Poor kid. I don't envy him for having to deal with that brat of yours. No doubt he'll be disappointed that his future foe is a perverted pawn. Don't sell us perverts short. Azazel warned with a small grin. We may just surprise you. I'll be sure to remember that, was the blonde's dry response. Cheeky punk. At any rate, we got a room ready for you if you want. Naruto informed him. Not sure how long you plan on staying, so I asked Tifa to spruce it up for you. Well, I wouldn't want to be rude and reject your generous offer of hospitality, Azazel replied. Speaking with a faux aristocratic voice. Just clean up any feather you mold off, Tifa quipped, having finished her cleaning and moved to her king's side. The man stared at the jab while Naruto barely held back an amused snort. Grumbling about rude hosts, he accepted the key to his room and headed up the stairs. Left alone, Tifa turned to her whisker-faced lead. And saw that he was looking at the interior of her bar. You really made a nice place, Tifa. I'm glad I was a part of it. I wouldn't have had this place for years if it wasn't for you, she softly replied, earning his full attention. You showed me a world I never knew, breaking me free of my small-minded view of the world and introducing me to one much bigger than I originally believed. You gave me a place in that world. And only continued to give when I was meant to follow you. Tifa. She stopped him by gently placing a finger to his lips and smiling beautifully at him. Nothing else was said, and her dark red eyes staring into his cerulean blues with open gratitude and affection. Removing her finger, she replaced it with her lips and shared a kiss with her king, hoping to convey what she was feeling to him. She and the others of his peerage knew that his heart yearned for another, but that didn't mean they wouldn't take a chance to show him how they felt for him when the opportunity presented itself. They would still do everything they could to help him find the woman stolen away from him, but they would make sure to take a place in his heart in the meantime. Pulling away from the kiss, she was happy to see the blush on his cheeks and how his smile tried to hide his embarrassment. She then moved closer to him, leaning into her king and prompting him to wrap his arms around her. Within his gentle embrace, she felt her walls go down, willingly allowing herself to be completely vulnerable in his arms as she listened to his heartbeat. Thank you, she whispered. For what? He whispered back. For not rejecting me, she thought to herself before verbally answering, for everything. The next day found Naruto walking through the streets of Kuo without his disguise. He was dressed in a black coat with light neon blue serpentine patterns and 3 separated coattails with slightly tattered edges. Beneath the coat, he wore a black sleeveless and zippered turtle neck beneath his midnight blue formal vest. His hands were garbed in charcoal gray fingerless gloves and he wore black pants with a pair of dark boots covered by teal gaiters with several straps. He was heading off to meet an old client of his peerage, the group having helped her around a year ago. Neo was currently keeping tabs on the 2 heiresses while Tifa was seeing to Azazel. The group met the man some months ago when on a job, and he expressed curiosity at the ragtag peerage from different walks of life led by an unknown. That meeting led to Naruto and Azazel establishing a temporary alliance with neither willingly impeding the progress of the other. It helped that Naruto's group pulled a couple jobs for the man while he promised to keep an ear out for something Naruto was searching for. A weapon related to his ancestry. Shaking his head to clear away those thoughts, he entered a hotel and asked the woman at the front desk for the correct room number before being led there. Knocking on the door, he waited for a moment before it opened and revealed a young woman with dark skin, pointed ears, and pale blonde hair who glared at him with red eyes before realizing who had knocked. Uzumaki-san, she greeted before standing aside and letting him inside. Ju-sama is expecting you. Thank you, Chloe, the blonde devil replied as he walked into the hotel room, allowing her to shut the door. Taking a moment to observe her, he saw that she was dressed more conservatively than her race usually did. Instead of her more revealing outfit, Chloe was dressed in a dark violet sweater and blue jeans while her shoes were left at the door. Despite not showing much skin, she still looked beautiful. But her beauty couldn't match that of her queen, who was lounging on the couch of their hotel room while reading through a weathered-looking tome. As Queen of the Dark Elves, Olga Discordia personified the term seductive. Her normal attire was gone in favor of an off-sleeve black dress with violet accents. Her black hair was silky smooth, reaching down to below her waist and covering her right eye. 3 golden rings adorned both of her pointed ears while her molten amb. Her eye moved away from her tome and regarded him. Closing the tome and setting it down, she gracefully got to her feet and stepped up to him with a faint smirk on her face. "Uzumaki-san," she greeted. "You look taller since last we saw each other. And your beauty remains divine, Discordia-sama," he returned, grasping her wrist so that he could kiss the top of her hand. Truthfully, he hated standing on ceremony. But this woman was a queen and she loved to be pampered. He learned that the hard way the last time he saw her. "Such a charmer, like your ancestor was," she complimented, offering high a seat across from the couch while she resumed lounging. "I wish this was a social call, but I'm afraid this meeting is for business and not pleasure." Chloe came into the room and offered Naruto some water, which he took with a thankful smile before turning back to Olga. "What is it you require, Discordia-sama?" "I am in search of an artifact belonging to the Light Elves, a scepter meant to power the wielder and grant them access to the divine arcana. I'm sure you can understand the reason for my desire, yes?" He nodded once. The divine arcana was a branch of magic said to rival the power of most gods, goddesses from various pantheons. Anyone who knew of such magic would crave its power, and if this scepter allowed one to easily call forth the divine arcana, then he was sure it wouldn't be an easy job to pull. "Do you have any information for me? And how soon do you wish for my peerage to bring it to you? Are you currently on call?" Olga asked back, earning another nod from the devil. "Yes, my peerage is in search of the Chalice of Beginnings for a religious group serving a woman named Saros. They've offered a substantial reward for our completion of the job. Do you know what that artifact is used for?" "Uzumaki-san," Chloe questioned, standing behind the couch her queen lounged upon. "I'm aware that it's needed to summon their progenitor god, but I also know that it requires the blood of 4 of their apostles. And 3 of the descendants of those 4 apostles are currently missing, with the accounted one under captivity," Olga informed him, earning an impressed glance from the Uzumaki. She chuckled smugly and teased, "You didn't think your group were the only ones approached by Saros and her followers, did you? I wasn't aware I would have possible competition in finding a dusty cup," he replied, sounding slightly annoyed. Competition cut into an estimated timetable, and it also showed how desperate a client could get. Or, how devious they could be. There had been a few jobs with competition that ended with the client trying to one-up all parties involved in its completion. Most of those clients didn't live to see the next sunrise. "So, where is the found descendant being held?" he asked curiously. "She's currently under our care back at Eostia. Her power is most interesting, being able to summon demonic beasts with a sigh," Olga answered, getting her guest to raise a brow. "She sighs to summon them," he repeated, sounding confused. "It's a curse born from the bloodline she carries," Olga explained. "Currently, we are holding the curse T-Bay with charms while we find a way for her to control it. She was quite grateful to us for that. It helps that our people have welcomed her openly." "Ju-sama," Chloe spoke up. "True. Do you have any more information on the chalice?" Naruto requested. "I have Ross and Medalia looking into it while Yoruichi is trying to get in touch with our insider, but they haven't reported anything to me yet." "Perhaps," Olga baited, smirking at him once more. "But you know that information is a highly valued commodity in this world. What are you willing to pay for what I know? I'll do the job you wish. My peerage to complete at 2/3 the cost. Half the cost, and you must join me for a pleasant evening the next time both of us are free from our responsibilities," the Dark Elf Queen stated firmly, her smirk still in place. She had felt the lingering power waiting to be unleashed from the whiskered devil before her. It was held on a tight leash, but she could tell that the power within was staggering. She had gotten a taste of it yesterday, followed by the powers of the 2 devil heiresses, and their power just couldn't compare to his own. She desired that power, and if not the power then the one who wielded it. It helped that the Uzumaki attracted her in both his looks and his personality. Oh, she knew that his peerage also desired him, but she didn't fear competition from them. She saw him think over her counteroffer before nodding in agreement. "Fine. Half the cost and you have me for a night. Now, the information." Olga's smirk changed to a pleasant smile as she shared what she knew with her favorite devil. Returning to 7th Heaven, Naruto was greeted by Neo who handed him a written report of her findings for the day. Looking it over, he raised a brow before turning to Azazel who sat at the bar. Were you aware that your stray flock had an excommunicated nun in their possession? A nun? Azazel repeated curiously, taking a moment to think before groaning. Damn it, Rainer. Who's that? Tifa asked, serving the man another cocktail. A subordinate of mine who was always overly eager about impressing me. She knows about my interest in sacred gears, so Whoa. I'dn't be surprised if this nun you're talking about has one. And if I had to guess, based on who I believe the poor girl is, then Rainer is after the Twilight healing. I've heard of that one, Naruto spoke up. A sacred gear said to heal any injury. I would think the church would have kept the girl under their supervision with a power like that. They did, and she was even believed to be a saint before she used that saintly power to heal a devil. When it was revealed that her power could do so, she was excommunicated and labeled a witch. The other three frowned in disgust at that. Typic. The church preaches about loving everyone and treating them with respect, only to cast aside a poor girl who only wanted to help someone and follow those hypocritical teachings, Naruto groused. At any rate, my guess is that Rainer is planning on performing some sort of ritual to steal the girl's sacred gear from her, Azazel deduced. It's rather peculiar that she happened to bump into the next red dragon, then. The Uzumaki mused aloud as he handed Azazel the report Neo made. The kid may be a pervert, but he's got a good heart. I almost pity him for what he's being pulled into by becoming a devil. Interesting. But I'm curious about something, the fallen angel spoke up. What will you do? Stand aside and let the heiresses deal with it? Or will you step in? Naruto wanted to wave off the question. But he saw the man was genuinely interested in his answer. A large part of me wants to avoid getting involved, despite what I've already done. However, this could be an opportunity to start my reveal to the underworld. Azazel smirked and suggested, you could offer your services to the Grimoire girl. After all, she has a problem, and your peerage is more than equipped to handle it. Imagine having the sister of a Satan in your back pocket. The thought was appealing to Naruto, and he turned to his two pieces. What do you two think? I'll ask the others when I get the chance. If you get Grimoire-san to owe us a favor, you could use it to try and find Lee-sama, Tifa informed him. She and Citri-san are allies, after all. Naruto frowned at that, still bothered by how he hadn't heard anything about his missing sister. The flower he kept with him was enchanted with magic linked to her essence and would keep its glow so long as she was still alive. It still glowed strong whenever he brought it out. Having another family help in the search would be a great boon to him, and it seemed Neo agreed since she nodded alongside Tifa at her words. He sighed and nodded to them. I'll ask the others, but I'm sure they'll also bring up that fact. If they agree, then I want all of you to be ready for an eventual meeting with the heiresses. They both nodded in understanding while Azazel chuckled to himself. Things are about to get very interesting. I can't wait to see how the Devil faction will react to the return of the Sparta bloodline. Issei was on a mission, that mission was to bust into the abandoned church and save Asia from the fallen angel that not only took her but was responsible for his death prior to becoming Rias's pawn. Going against the orders of his king, he was acting on what he believed was right and was grateful to Kiba and Kaneko for joining him. They were risking Rias's trust in them to help him save Asia. He was lucky to have them as friends. The trio were getting closer to the church, prepping themselves to crash the party and get the drop on the fallen. However, someone blurred into sight directly in front of them. Someone they had run into a few days ago. Without the cloak, the three members of Rias's peerage saw that it was a young man that looked to be their king's age. His clothes looked to be in much better condition, save for the slightly tattered coattails, and they saw that he was a blond man with fierce blue eyes and whisker markings on his cheeks. His hair was a bit wild and unkempt, but mostly swept backward with some stray bangs falling over his forehead while his hands rested upon the end of his katana as if the weapon were a cane. Evening, he greeted them casually, not reacting to them taking battle stances at his presence. He simply chuckled at their paranoia and explained, "Relax, I'm not here to fight you three. You see, one of my friends is giving the fallen angels in there a bit of a surprise. It's best if we wait it out here. How do we know you aren't in league with the fallen?" Kiba questioned with a frown. Smirking, Naruto took his katana into his left hand and casually stepped aside. "If you want to go on, then be my guest. Just don't blame me if you get caught up in the surprise. What kind of surprise? Kaneko asked. The rancid, puke your guts out kind. The answer brought the trio up short. Not expecting that kind of description. Issei was about to ask for more details, but he was cut off by a massive explosion of deep violet smoke that was powerful enough to shatter the windows, blow apart the doors, and break away any rotten wooden framework. What the fuck? The pawn cried out in shock. Give it a minute, the whisker-faced devil advised, calmly. Observing as some rogue priests and the fallen angels rushed out of the building only to collapse with green faces, vomit stains, and bloodshot eyes. It was more successful than I thought it'd be. I'll have to tell her not to play around with the extras. Rias's peerage members all turned to him nervously. There's more of that crap? Kaneko asked while mentally cursing her enhanced sense of smell and covering her nose. By hell itself, that smoke's odor was disgusting. Oh, yes. You wouldn't believe the types of ingredients go into making something this potent. He chuckled to himself, smirking as a woman wearing a witch's hat strolled out while whistling a jaunty tune with a dazed nun being carried piggyback. Asia! Issei cried out in worry, rushing over to her and taking the poor girl from the witch. As he looked her over and checked for a pulse, Kiba and Kaneko watched warily as the witch approached the man. Whiskers, I gotta tell ya. That shit was great. The smell, the power, the usefulness. It was fucking glorious, she exclaimed exuberantly while giving him a shark-like grin. Glad you enjoyed yourself. Would you mind tying up everyone? But keep her, he pointed to the fallen wearing clothing that was practically bondage gear, separate from the rest. She'll be in for something special. On it, the witch replied with a mock salute before snapping her fingers, which let off a bright green spark of magic. To the surprise of the others, vines sprung from the earth and latched onto anyone they could grab before pulling them together and wrapping around them all. They wrapped around their wrists and their ankles before wrapping around their midsections to hold them all in place. The only one left out of the wrapped group was Rainer, who was dragged over to the blonde man's side. Turning to the trio while Issei helped a now conscious Asia to her feet, he spoke up, your mistress should be here soon, along with a guest. Guest. The three devils repeat, ed in their minds before a familiar transportation circle appeared beside them while another foreign one was revealed beside the witch. Rias and Akino appeared from her circle while, to their shock, Azazel appeared next to the witch. He gave the devils a casual grin and greeted, hello, all. Nice night, isn't it? Azazel. Rias questioned in confusion, not expecting the leader of the Grigori to show up. Not to be rude, but what are you and these fallen doing here in Kuo? Well, I personally am here to take them back into my custody since they went AWOL on me and acted against my orders. As for them, I had ordered them to strictly keep an eye on the newest Red Dragon Emperor, the man answered, gesturing to a confused Issei while Rias looked shocked at the reveal. But, Rainer killed me. The poor boy muttered. I know, and I'm offering my own personal apologies for her actions. They were not on my orders, I promise you. I only tasked her with observing you since I've made it a personal responsibility of mine to keep an eye on potential sacred gear holders. You never know when one will run rampant thanks to a holder unable to control its power. Rias and her furry NDS were barely able to hold in a wince at that, being reminded of Gasper and his sacred gear. Even now, the poor boy was hidden away under a plethora of seals to keep his power in check. Now, if you don't mind, I'll take my subordinates into my custody and deal with the rogue priests, Azazel continued before turning to the whiskered blonde. As for Rainer, I'll agree to your request. Please wake her up. Nodding, he turned to the witch. Metalia, do you mind? Give me a sec, the swamp witch replied, grabbing some roots from her own personal magic subspace before snapping them in half and holding them in front of Rainer's nose. Once she got a whiff of the natural-smelling salt, Rainer gasped awake before gagging and turning her head to vomit. Rias's group cringed at the reaction the smell of her puke while Metalia smirked. Once she was done, she coughed a few times before noticing her predicament. Whatever color was left in her face was drained away at the sight of Azazel giving her a disappointed look. Lord Azazel, this isn't. She tried to explain but was silenced when the man raised a palm in a halting manner. Save the excuses. I'm fully aware of what you and your friends attempted to do this evening, Rainer. As you can see, your little plan has been thwarted thanks to an associate of mine and his. Bishop. Rias's group looked to the whiskered blonde in surprise. Not knowing that Medalia was a member of his peerage, let alone that he was a devil. They saw him shoot Azazel, an annoyed look that the fallen leader easily shrugged off. As payment to High M for dealing with matters concerning the Grigori, it has been decided that you will be placed in his custody as a servant. You are no longer welcome amongst the Grigori, Rainer. Do you understand what your actions have done for you? Her eyes widened in dread at his declaration. But she tried to say, fighting her tears at what was happening. I only did this because Lord Kokabeel said it would please you. All I've ever done was to prove myself to you, Lord Azazel. And look what that's cost you. The man questioned without missing a beat. We'll discuss this in further detail in a moment. For now, I need to run damage control because of what you attempted in Devil territory. Heartbroken at his disappointed tone, Rainer sat in silence with her sobs being the only sound she made. She jumped in surprise when she felt a hand rest on her shoulder, and she turned her head to see that it was her new master who was conveying sympathy in his blue eyes. She wanted to snap at him, to pull away from his touch. But she saw that his expression was genuine. Never before, other than from Azazel, had anyone looked to her with such sincerity before. While she still fought her sobs, she did nothing to stop him from offering her a supportive hand. Meanwhile, Azazel was giving a more detailed explanation of his orders to Rainer and her associates. So, I hope you understand that I didn't mean to cause trouble for you or the Citri girl. I was just keeping an eye out just in case Hyodo-kun lost control of his sacred gear. And trust me, we do not want the red dragon running rampant. Rias nodded in understanding. Yes, I can see why that would be concerning to you. Still, I'll need to inform my brother about this. This issue is bigger than me, and I don't think I have any right to keep it from him. True, the current Lucifer should be made aware of this. Just pass along that he can contact me at any time if he has any further questions. I will. I appreciate you taking responsibility for this, Lord Azazel. No need for the formalities, girl, he waved off, smiling casually now that the seriousness was dealt with. To be honest, I'd rather be relaxing on the beach with a pretty gal than dealing with this crap. Issei perked up and nodded at the man's preferred activity in agreement. But I'm the leader of the fallen. As much as I don't like it, I got duties to fulfill. With that, he approached the apprehended fallen and robed clergy before sending them away with his magic. He then turned to his associate and bid, I'll be over to discuss Rainer with you later. Naruto. Naruto grumbled at the casual reveal of his identity as he watched Azazel leave. With a sigh, he ordered, Medalia, take Rainer to the others and explain the situation. I'll be there shortly. Got it, Whiskers. Let's go. Sack girl, she announced. Sack girl, Rainer repeated in confusion before yelping as she was picked up and thrown over Medalia's shoulder, like a sack of potatoes. Yeah, I think the name fits. The swamp witch stated with a nod before she and the fallen angel vanished. Left alone, Naruto turned to Rias and her peerage, once again placing his hands upon his sword like a cane. You have questions? Quote. Damned right, I do, Rias confirmed with a scowl. Who are you and what are you doing in my territory? I've never heard of you or your peerage before, and I am a point of being aware of any kings that look to be my age. Smart of you, but I doubt either you or Citri have heard of me, let alone the other rookie devil peerages. At any rate, I'll answer some of your questions tomorrow. You and your peerage go to the academy here in town, so my peerage will meet with you and Citri after the academy lets out. What makes you think I'll let you leave? She challenged as her peerage. Save for Issei, who was moving Asia to safety behind him, readied themselves for a fight. Did you forget just how easily I held you and Citri's peerage back when you thought I was a decaying body? Naruto fired back with a raised brow. Or how my presence alone left you all at my mercy. Rias scowled and gritted her teeth, annoyed at him being right in how he could destroy them. Despite their advantage in numbers. Fine, we'll meet your peerage tomorrow. Good to hear, the Uzumaki bid with a smirk. Until then, Grimori. And with that, he vanished in a blur. No magic circle needed, just pure speed. Wait, Rainer, who was now standing and free of her bonds, spoke up to Azazel with a puzzled look on her face. You banished me from the Grigori, but you still want me to observe for you. I mainly banished you because of the need to keep appearances, the man explained. Granted, you are still a servant of Naruto and his peerage, but that doesn't mean he's keeping you from doing a job or two for me. And you want me to observe Grimori's queen. Why? What's so special about her? She's half fallen, Naruto explained casually, enjoying some scotch served to him by Tifa. Hold up. Seriously? Yes, Azazel confirmed. In fact, she's got ties with one of the Grigori's more important members. And no, I won't tell you who that member is. All you need to know is that I was asked to look after her as a favor to them, which is what I'm having you do as a punishment from me. Rainer's brow twitched at the pleased grin on her old leader's face. Aving heard that he liked to dump his responsibilities on others but always defending him since she wanted to prove herself to him. Seeing it firsthand made her realize the man she had greatly admire. D was just a lazy pervert who didn't want to be in charge. You know, it's that kind of attitude that makes Kokobile going behind your back and operating under your nose much less surprising, Naruto deadpanned. And Rainer couldn't help but agree. Hey, I never asked to be the Grigori leader. I was forced into my position. He tried defending himself, but he came off as a petulant child. Dry looks from his ex-subordinate, Naruto. And his peerage were the response to his so-called defense. And he could only grumble about their judgmental looks. Ignoring the man-child for the moment, Naruto C. Antinuden expertly ignored the indignant cry from said man-child. We're meeting with Grimori, Citri, and their peerages tomorrow. During the meeting, I plan on offering our services to Grimori in regards to her marital issues with Riser Phoenix. If we can get her or her family in our back pocket, we can increase the chances of finding Lee's. His peerage nodded in understanding while Rossweisse moved over to stand beside him, taking his hand in her own and offering him a gentle smile full of support. You know we're with you, Naruto-kun, she assured him. We'll do whatever it takes to find Lee-sama. The others gave their king supportive smiles as well, and he returned it with a grateful smile of his own. Thank you. Now, any word on that dusty cup? Medalia and Rossweisse sighed and shook their heads. Nothing more than what we've found out and what you were told by Discordia-sama, his queen, answered. Shitty-ass cup is hard to get any kind of fucking info on, Medalia grumbled irritably. He nodded at that before offering them a reassuring smile. Keep searching when you can. You two know the most about magical artifacts out of us. I'm sure you'll find more about it. He turned to Yoruichi and asked. Any word from our insider? Not really. She's checking her own channels, but nothing new so far. There is talk that Saros is gathering information on relics from different pantheons and is offering generous payments for any worthwhile info. Our insider confessed to having passed along some info and was given a few sacks of gold as payment, something she was all too eager to accept. Naruto chuckled at that. Yeah, Anna's always been a sucker for good deals. Keep in touch with her and remind her what I'm offering her for her help. 1. Will do, Foxy. He then turned to Tifa and said. I'm going to leave Rainer in your hands. Have her work here at the bar, but also help her get tougher. No sense in letting her skills dull while in our care. Rainer L. Looked surprised that she was being offered training while Tifa nodded with a smile. You got it, Naruto. You'll train me. The fallen girl couldn't help asking. Naruto gave her a smirk and answered, as I said. There's no sense in letting your skills dull. You may technically be a sort of POW, but that doesn't mean I'll treat you like some sort of slave. However, we will be changing your outfit. She huffed with crossed arms, averting her gaze with a pout. Don't judge me on my fashion sense. If you think that's fashion, then you've fallen or kinkier than devils, he deadpanned. Deciding to try messing with her new master. She gave him a sultry smirk and offered, I'll satisfy any of your kinks, Naruto-sama tilde. She then yelped and cradled her head, nursing her new bump via Neo's parasol strike. The pawn smirked condescendingly and wagged her finger negatively, as if she were treating Rainer like a child. This only made her glare at the petite woman. Lucky shot, she grumbled. Moving on, Naruto spoke up again. Everyone be ready for the meeting tomorrow. Rainer, you'll be staying here with Azazel since he's booked his room through tomorrow night and I'm sure he has more questions for you. She looked between her old leader and her new master a few times before she sighed and nodded. Okay. Good. Now everyone, go and get some rest. We'll meet again tomorrow. Naruto was seated in an admittedly comfortable chair within the old school building that Rias had taken for her peerage at the academy. He sipped some tea that had been kindly offered to him by her queen, humming softly before giving her a nod. "This is delicious," he complimented, earning a slightly stiff nod from her. He then turned his attention to the two heiresses who had taken the couch with their two peerages standing behind them. What was curious to him was that the nun girl was standing next to the red dragon, and he felt the change in her natural power matching that of a newly instated devil. "I see you've gained another member to your peerage, Grumori. I hope it wasn't done against her will." Rias bristled at that while Issei yelled out, "Oi! Lay off on Bushu, you whiskered bastard." Asia-chan asked to become a devil. Quote, "I see. Then shall we move along, then? I'm sure you both have questions." "Indeed," Sona spoke up, fixing her glasses. "The biggest question we have is your identity. We have no clue as to who you are save for a first name. No family name or mention of someone matching your description before amongst the rookies. That's because I'm not a member of you rookies. I received my evil piece set when I was 14 years of age, and I obtained them in a different manner than you two and the others in your age group. You two are what? 17, maybe 18 years old." 18, Sona confirmed. "I, myself, am 20 years of age. And in the 6 years I've had my evil pieces, I can tell that they would sweep through both of your peerages simultaneously. Now you just sound arrogant." Rias scoffed, earning a chuckle from him. "And what's so funny? Aren't we devils, as a race, full of pride of arrogance? At least, that is the alleged truth that we and the other factions have accepted. Who are you to judge me on my so-called arrogance, Haim-sama?" She scowled at him while Sona cut in, "That's enough of that. We aren't here to antagonize one another. We're here to sort out our concerns regarding you and your presence here. Who I am is a devil that doesn't feel too keen on revealing his past to a couple of young women with peerages that are, for lack of a better word, lacking. The Sea-Tree heiress repeated. "In what way would you find us to be? You have plenty of members each, but they're all underdeveloped as peerage members. Let alone as devils. To be fair to you, there isn't a war or conflict happening save for the ceasefire between the factions, but that shouldn't mean you get to be complacent. I've made sure to wring out the potential of my entire peerage, and I have total confidence in their abilities should another skirmish break out. Better to be foolishly prepared than to be an unprepared fool." The two heiresses frowned at him while he calmly took another drink of his tea. "Why do you feel the need to be so prepared when you admitted that nothing is happening?" Rias asked. "What would you call the tions of those fallen angels last evening then, Grumori? Would you classify that as nothing when Rainer called out Kokobile, a rumored war hawk, by name? Besides that, there are wars and skirmishes going on despite the external ceasefire. Shadow plays, underhanded deals, wars hidden behind false smiles and pretty words. My peerage has experience in these skirmishes, and it is because of that experience that we are prepared for when they break free from the shadows and expose themselves." "I didn't know things like that actually happened," she muttered, feeling a bit nervous now. Sona was frowning at nothing, seemingly lost in her thoughts. "Your elder siblings, as well as your parents, hope to keep this from you. But the fact is that, despite the temporary peace, there are still battles being fought in secret. My peerage takes part in them. It is one of the reasons why we have set up our own base here in Kuo." "You what?" Sona asked in surprise. "How long have you established yourself here?" He smirked and replied. "Officially. About a week now. Unofficially, I'd rather not say. You're trespassing on Grumori and Sea-Tree territory," she continued, her tone one of warning. "Am I? Now that's odd, considering how you were allowed to stay here thanks to Lady Yusaka's generosity. After all, the yokai faction owns Japan as a territory. Did you honestly believe that they would all out devils to set up shop here without observing them? Watching and waiting for them to fuck something up?" He scoffed at the unsure looks they now sported. "So naive, so innocent to the real world, me something. Why would the yokai even think of allowing devils into their lands when they were the ones who committed the near genocide of a yokai species? You have one of two survivors here in this building right now." Kaneko cringed and shrank into herself, hoping to hide away from the looks that would come her way. "But that was..." Rias tried to argue, but she was cut off. "Because of Kuroka, the stray cat. Honestly, The stupidity of our race is staggering. One Nekosho seemingly goes mad with senjutsu. And suddenly the whole race is to be held under suspicion. The actions of a single member reflect on the race as a whole. How does that make sense? How is that justified? The yokai have demanded the devils to answer those questions for years, and they still haven't received an acceptable response. I wouldn't be surprised if Lady Yasaka demanded reparations for the near extinction of the Nekosho. An uncomfortable silence weighed heavily on the heiresses and their peerages, even if some of the members were ignorant to the severity of what was being said. But we've gone off track, Naruto conceded, dropping the subject. I've come here for 3 things. The first was to reveal myself to you both and tell you that my peerage is stationed here in Kuo with Lady Yasaka's support. That was a surprise for them to hear. The second was to introduce my peerage to you all, Kansai. Ring how you've extended the same courtesy and I would rather avoid any further suspicion. With that, he tapped the butt of his sheathed katana against the ground once, prompting a few transportation circles with a spiral symbol at the core to appear on the floor behind him. From the circles, 5 women appeared and stood diligently behind the whiskered blonde. 2 of them were smirking, 1 was smiling confidently. And the remaining 2 were perfectly calm. Allow me to introduce my peerage. Mike Pond Neapolitan, and Mike Bishop Medalia. The 2 smirking women nodded, though Medalia's smirk grew into a shark-like grin while Neo's eyes both changed to a delighted pink. Might Knight Yoruichi Shihoin. Yoruichi winked at them all and revealed her own Neko features while her yellow eyes gave a faint glint in the light of the room. Might Rook Tifa Lockhart. Tifa inclined her head respectfully and gave a lovely smile that made Issei and Saji blush. And lastly my Queen, Rossweisse. Naruto finished as the Valkyrie gave a polite bow. As you can see, my peerage is only made up of 5 members if you do not include myself. Meaning you still have some evil pieces left to use, Rias deduced. But she was caught flat-footed when Naruto's peerage looked amused at her guess. Nope, I have a full set. All of my evil pieces have been used. He smirked dangerously and stressed, every last one. Sona's eyes widened at the implications. Then, you mean to say that each member is comprised of the maximum number of their designated evil pieces, Naruto finished. Correct, young Citri. Those not of Naruto's group were stunned at the reveal. A full evil piece set, and all of it focused into the minimum number of members. This meant that each member of Naruto's peerage had incredible potential. And a high cost to them. Now, onto the final reason I'm here, Naruto pressed on as he turned his attention to Rias. I hear rumors that you're engaged to a riser Phoenix, yes. How did you? Remember, my peerage takes part behind the shadows. We know many things about our own faction, such as the deals or contracts between prominent families like the Grimoire and Phoenix. Rias swallowed a lump in her throat. Now realizing how dangerous Naruto's peerage was. He was obviously powerful, with his power alone able to weigh down her peerage and Sona's with ease. But the real danger he was capable of was the information he potentially had at his disposal. If he wished to, he could give that information to other groups. Dangerous groups with grudges against the devils. From what I've noticed, you are rather adamantly against this marriage. The loathing you have for Riser is noteworthy, as is the disadvantage your peerage would have against his should you grow desperate and challenge him to a rating game. He has a full set with the maximum number of members while you have the minimum like myself. The difference between us, however, is that my peerage has realize their potential while yours is rather green. Rias frowned at his easy dismissal of herself and her friends. Get to the point, she almost growled out. Her irritation made him chuckle. The point, as you called it, is this: I'm offering the services of myself and my peerage to deal with this marriage contract between your family and the Phoenix. Rias's anger dropped at that, becoming surprise. His words while her friends were a mixture of confused and hopeful. Aside from Issei and Asia who were unaware of Rias's disgust for Riser, they knew how desperate Rias was becoming about finding a way out of the contract. How would you be able to help me? And why would you want to for that matter? Rias couldn't help but ask, stomping down the spark of hope she was beginning to feel. Naruto held out his hand to the side. And Yoruichi placed some papers atop his palm. Grasping them, he took a moment to show them that it was a copy of the contract before he began to leaf through it in search of something. When he found it, he cleared his throat and read. Should both parties find themselves at odds on the outcome of this contract, a rating game between them can be used to settle the matter. As for the rating game participants, if both parties are obviously not evenly matched against one another, the party at the disadvantage has the option of having a proxy peerage of similar age and experience take their place. Sending away the documents, Naruto steepled his hands atop his sword and smirked at the shocked and hopeful expression on Rias's face. As you can see, since you're the party at the disadvantage, you can have me and my peerage act as your proxy for the rating game. And it would be perfectly legal since, despite the overall experience we have over you, we have not participated in a single rating game. So, technically our peerages have similar experience when it comes to rating games. Sona hummed thoughtfully and readjusted her glasses again before nodding. It sounds plausible. And your anonymity as a peerage would keep them from being too suspicious. The only problem I see is that peerages are given to noble families, and you've yet to tell us what family you belong to. I'll only reveal that when the official asks me for it. Until then, I'm offering you my aid, Rias Grimori. However, understand that my services aren't free, and the price for them will be a favor from you to be used after the rating game is finished. He smirked and added, I'll even have it so that you won't owe me anything unless we win. What do you think? Rias, Sona spoke up, sounding incredibly serious. Think very hard about this before you make a decision. I understand your feelings on the matter, but be sure think about the cost you may have to pay. She's right, Naruto agreed. While having a favor from you in my pocket would be quite the boon to me, I won't push you into this. It's entirely your choice. Rias frowned, deep in thought as she considered everything. She weighed the pros and cons of accepting Naruto's offer of having his peerage acting as a proxy for her against the pros and cons of rejecting his offer. She thought about what would happen should either of them lose to Riser. And what would happen to her friends when she became the legal wife of that pig of a devil, Riser. After a few moments of nobody saying anything, she finally took a breath and nodded to herself. Turning to the whisker-faced devil sitting across from her, she rose from her feet and saw him do the same as she approached him. Staring into his eyes, she saw them Florida's. From blue to a deep crimson so briefly that part of her wondered if she imagined it happen. Resigning herself to her choice, she reached out her hand and watched as he took it in his own. The two of them shook, solidifying the deal. You'd better make sure he understands how much I refuse to marry him, Rias demanded, earning a chuckle from him. So demanding, Haim-sama. But I suppose I'm under contract as your proxy. So, of course. The smirk on his face grew into a fanged grin, and this time she saw his eyes change to crimson and stay there as he promised, he will not forget this devil's power. While she knew she was making a literal deal with the devil, Rias found that she didn't care. So long as she was free from the burdens of her family's contract. That didn't mean she wasn't feeling uneasy. Again, Tifa called out, prompting Rainer to summon as many light spears as she could and launch them at a multitude of targets. Some of them hit, but most struck the ground around the targets. And the fallen angel was left panting in exhaustion. How was that? She asked between heavy breaths. Your hit-to-miss ratio is still below average. Your spears miss more often than they're hitting. But targets don't move, she tried to argue, having caught her breath. By having some spears surround the target, it cuts off avenues of escape. True, but for now I want you to focus on hitting the targets. Limit the number of light spears you create so that you're not needlessly wasting energy. Huffing, the fallen still nodded and got ready to try again before she noticed our new master walking up to her instructor from behind. Naruto-sama, she greeted. Tifa turned to him with a smile. Come to watch. That and to see if I can offer Rainer some insight. You mind? He replied. Not at all. The beautiful bar owner said as she stepped aside, allowing Naruto to step up to the fallen angel. Show me how you gather light spears. She frowned in confusion, but she plied and summoned around 5 spears by raising her arm and gathering her power. You're too obvious in gathering your spears. In battle, you can't telegraph your movements, otherwise, they're bound to miss or be countered. I've never summoned my spears another way, though. Nodding in understanding, Naruto gave her a smirk and flicked his eyes upward for a split second. Heads up, he warned. Confused, she looked above her and widened her eyes at the multitude of blades made of glowing blue energy. With a yelp, she dove to the side just in time for them to rain down around where she once stood, littering it with deadly accuracy. Breathing frantically, she turned to him in shock as he casually walked over to her. Fear gripped her as he crouched down, but she was caught off guard when he used 2 fingers to poke her forehead and gave her a smirk. See, if I never warned you ahead of time, you would have been a pincushion. How did you practice? He answered her unfinished question. It took me many years to develop that move, and it isn't the only method I can use my mirage blades. In a blink, a heavy-looking, double-edged blade of blue energy appeared on his back before, in another blink, it vanished. And then, as if he were showing off, he raised a solitary finger and had a smaller blade appear, spinning dangerously above it before breaking into wisps. You have potential, Rainer. As my newest vassal, it is my duty as your master to bring out that potential. My goal is to get you to a point where you can mimic my mirage blades with your light spears. Observe. Rainer watched as he stood back to his full height and turned his head towards the targets she had been practicing on. In a flurry of movement, multiple blades appeared and were fired at the targets, but Naruto himself never moved a muscle. He didn't even twitch. She thought in shock, eyes wide once more at how each blade fired hit its target in a flash and was dead center. Turning back to her, Naruto calmly asked, "Do you see now? You really think I can get to that level of skill? If I didn't think it, I wouldn't have bothered to barter your life with Azazel. I would have handed you over to him alongside your former associates." Turning to her fully, he finished, "I saw nothing in them, but everything in you." His words left her stunned silent, and they also brought a faint blush to her face. Other than Azazel, nobody had ever told her she could be someone. Most fallen angels looked out for themselves, so she couldn't find much support there. But here was a devil she was now in the service of. And he was giving her the support and inspiration that she had desperately desired. Through him, Rainer was starting to believe she could become someone far greater than she would have been otherwise. So, inspired by him, she got back to her feet and gave the whisker-faced devil a look of raw determination. "I won't let you down, Naruto-sama." He graced her with another smirk. ND gave a brief nod before he turned and left. When he departed, Tifa turned to her with a knowing smile and asked, "Ready for more?" "Yes. So, you'll be making your debut soon," Olga mused aloud. As she and Naruto were sitting at a high-end restaurant in Tokyo. She was dressed in a dark violet, single-strapped dress that hugged her curves and gave a teasing view of her cleavage thanks to the diamond-shaped cutout in the front. Naruto was dressed in the suit he wore when his peerage had gathered over a week ago, minus the tie altogether. Looking over the top of the menu in his hands, he offered her a small smirk. "Keeping tabs on me, Olga. It's the way of the game, my dear," she replied easily, firing a smirk back at him. "I'm curious about how much you'll be willing to reveal. Your heritage, perhaps. I'll leave that up to speculation. This job I'm doing for the Grimoire heiress is simply a means to an end so that I can have her in my back pocket. With the resources allowed to her as the heiress, I can expand my search. For your sister." Setting his menu down, he nodded once. "Not a day goes by where I don't worry about her, where I don't check to see if she's still alive. So many years have passed. And I know that I've failed her." "That isn't true," she assured him, reaching across the table to gently grasp his hand. "The day you give up hope is the day you have failed her. You've dedicated so much in the pursuit of her, and you've lived a life in the shadows to acquire the means to keep searching. Few devils, few people, would keep going after so long without a trace. The fact that you have not stopped speaks volumes of your character, and your devotion to those you love." Her words helped cheer him up, and he closed his hand around hers with a faint smile. "Thank you, I needed to hear that. No one can go through hardships alone, Naruto. Sometimes, we must depend on others to get back on our feet." The two shared another small smile before their waiter came and took their orders. Dinner after that talk was a more pleasant affair, with the two swapping stories of some events they had gone through over the years. For Naruto, he had learned more about how she had become the queen of the Dark Elves, winning her people's trust and loyalty through her actions and her fulfilled promises. He was getting to know the woman behind the queen and seeing just who Olga Discordia was. For Olga, she was entertained by some of the riskier jobs that Naruto and his peerage had taken. One in particular had her covering her mouth to stave off her laughter when it was revealed that he had been swallowed alive by a giant serpent, only for him to cleave it in two with his sword and be left coated in slime and blood. When dinner was finished, the two departed from the restaurant arm in arm as Naruto led her through the city and towards a park with the blossoms in bloom. They partook in an evening stroll by a few koi fish ponds before taking a seat on one of the benches. I keep forgetting how beautiful this country is, Naruto mused. It amazes me that, despite how modern and ahead of its time Japan has become, they never forget their roots and what made their land so magnificent. Perhaps you could take some time to visit Eostia, she offered. You and your peerage would be treated as guests of honor, and I could show you the beauty of our country. My, are we feeling a little competitive, Lady Olga? He teased, earning a harmless swat to the arm. Be silent. I'm serious. I would very much like for you to come. His teasing smile softened to a sincere one. Well, when I'm personally invited by the lovely dark elf queen, who am I to refuse? You'd be a fool if you did, and you are no fool in my eyes, Naruto Sparta. He chuckled with a shake of his head. Not going to stop calling me that, are you? Even when I go by my maternal family name. Don't deny who you are, my dear devil, she whispered sultrily, reaching up to cup his cheek. She smirked and continued. Few could capture my interest. Fewer still could keep my interest. And the fewest could have me give chase. Oh, are you chasing me, Olga? He fired back, staring her in the eyes as his changed from blue to crimson. Her smirk grew as she closed the distance and melded her lips to his in a kiss. It lasted for a few seconds before she pulled back, looking pleased with herself. I'd say the chase is over. Maybe it is, he mused, his eyes returning to their crystalline blue shade. Or maybe it's only begun, he finished before vanishing in a burst of dark blue wisps. She was left stunned for a few moments before she chuckled to herself, the chuckles becoming full-blown laughter after a moment. When it died down, her gaze became one of purpose as she opened a portal back to her kingdom. I will have you yet, my dear half-breed, she swore aloud as she vanished from the moonlit park. When Naruto reappeared in his room, he wasn't surprised to see his queen sitting at the desk looking over some old tomes. She looked up to him when he arrived, offering him a gorgeous smile as she got to her feet and moved over to him. Embracing him, she greeted, "Welcome back, Naruto-kun. How was your date?" "Who said it was a date?" he asked when Rossweisse pulled away, earning a roll of the eyes from her. "Please, we all knew that it was a date as soon as Discordia-sama made that deal with you. She's been trying to snag you ever since we finished that first job for her. It seems my peerage knows more than I do. Only when it comes to women who desire our king," she teased him, leaning up to kiss his cheek and pulling away with a faint blush. "For we see that desire in ourselves every day." That reveal threw him for a loop for a few moments before he chuckled in embarrassment. "I really am blind at times, aren't I? I wouldn't say blind, more like hyper-focused on other things. Things like finding clues about Lee-sama. I see. Still, I hope you can forgive me for not noticing your feelings. Tifa had to show me hers a couple days ago, and it caught me off guard." Giving him a serene smile, she cupped his cheek lovingly and then moved in to share a kiss with her king. When she pulled away, she saw concern in his visage and felt a wetness rolling down her cheeks. "Rossweisse, it's okay," she assured him, her voice thick with emotion. "I've just wanted to do that for a long time now. And now that I've done it, I can't help feeling so happy. I was always teased back in Valhalla about being the Valkyrie without a lover, but I believe I have found the perfect one in you." Quote. The whisker-faced devil was incredibly touched by her words, and he pulled Rossweisse back in for another kiss, this one hungrier than the first. By the time they pulled away, they had somehow gotten onto the bed with him hovering above her as she looked to him with desire and adoration. "Do you?" he asked softly, getting her to nod with a smile. "Take me as your queen, my beloved king," she answered him. And the night was one of blossomed love. Rias was anxious as she awaited the arrival of her brother's queen, and her sister-in-law, Graphia, to arrive followed by Riser. Apparently, her betrothed grew tired of waiting for her to graduate from school and had pushed for their wedding to be moved ahead of schedule. With her in the Occult Research Club's house as her peerage, who she had told to be on their best behavior, particularly Issei. She had warned him that Riser would show off his full peerage and that they were more than likely all members of his harem. Something like that was bound to get a reaction from her breast-obsessed pawn, and she didn't need him to unintentionally make a scene. Seated at her desk, she looked down at the personalized summoning tag that Naruto had given her when she accepted his offer to act as her proxy. It looked like a regular magic circle used for travel, save for the swirling insignia in the center. He had told her that it was a single-use tag and was only to be used when she was about to reveal him as her proxy. Now, she just needed to keep waiting for the arrival of her guests, 10F, which was arriving now in the magic circle of her brother's peerage. Appearing before Rias in her peerage was Graphia Lucifuge, the strongest queen of the Netherworld and wife of the Lucifer Satan, Searsex. She was a beautiful young woman appearing to be in her early 20s with silver eyes and back length, equally silver hair that featured a long braid on each side with small blue bows at the ends, while the rest of her silver tresses were let down. For clothing, she wore a blue and white French-made outfit with long sleeves and a white-made headband over her head with red lipstick as the only noticeable cosmetic accessory. Rias-sama, she greeted politely with a bow. "You are well, I hope." "I've been better," Rias replied with an uncomfortable expression, earning an understanding nod from the woman. "I take it Riser won't be long. He should arrive shortly. I assume you are still against the marriage." "That should be obvious, considering I never wanted it in the first place." "I'm aware of that, Rias-sama. However, this marriage was contracted in the hope of uniting two houses and—" "Don't remind me why my father made this stupid contract," Rias cut Graphia off with a frown. "I'm well aware of the desires my father and Lord Phoenix have for myself and Riser, and I know of Riser's desire too." "Did someone mention my name?" An arrogant voice spoke up, and Riser Fiend X was revealed in a swirl of fire from his family's magic circle. "Ah, the human realm. How is it that you can stand being in this place, my dear Rias?" "Humans have potential that you could never see, Riser," she answered calmly. "Let's just get this meeting over with. Why did you push forward the date of the wedding? You know that I'm to be allowed to stay here until I graduate. Why delay the inevitable, Rias? Whether it's before or after you graduate, the result would be the same. You and I will become husband and wife, and we will then sire a child that will become the newest super devil of the Netherworld. I've said this multiple times, Riser. I do not want to marry you, and I refuse to adhere to a contract that was made before I had any right to contest it. Besides, why should I allow you to marry into the Grimoire house? After all, the only one between us who is the heir of their family name is me, while your brother is the rightful heir of House Phoenix." Riser lost his Aroga NT expression and was looking irritated at her words. "Even if I was looking for a suitor, I wouldn't choose you simply because you have nothing worthwhile to offer me and my family," Rias finished, a pleased smirk on her face at getting under Riser's skin. "When we marry, I'll have to show you what I can offer to you," he promised her threateningly. Issei looked ready to step forward, but he ughed a look from his king and backed off. That didn't mean he wasn't going to give Riser a warning glare for the threat. "So, I assume you won't back down from your little act of rebellion?" Riser asked rhetorically. "That is correct. Then, I also assume that you'll be challenging me to a rating game. It is the only way out of this contract, after all." "You're half right," Rias answered calmly, earning a confused look from him while Graphia faintly raised a brow in interest. "I am challenging you to a rating game, however, I will not be the one you will face." "You cannot challenge me without participating, Rias," Riser argued with a frown. Actually, she shot down as she pulled out the copy of the contract that Naruto had gotten. "I can." "Graphia, would you mind looking at the Sectio N of the contract that deals with the rating game termination?" Still interested, Graphia stepped forward and accepted the contract from Rias before she carefully leafed through it towards the section mentioned. When she found it, she read it over silently before spotting what Rias was no doubt referring to. At Rias's nod, Graphia cleared her throat and read aloud, "Should both parties find Thames elves at odds on the outcome of this contract, a rating game between them can be used to settle the matter. As for the rating game participants, if both parties are obviously not evenly matched against one another, the party at the disadvantage has the option of having a proxy peerage of similar age and experience take their place. According to the contract, I can have a proxy peerage act in my place. Rias declared with a small look of triumph. After all, my peerage has no experience in raiding games, and you have a full set compared to mine. My peerage is at the obvious disadvantage here, which would make taking part in the raiding game practically pointless. Riser rudely snatched the contract and looked it over, searching for anything that could contest Rias's claim. When he found none, he threw it aside with a look of building frustration. He had been banking on an easy win against Rias to seal the deal on the contract and legally remove any way for her to get out of marrying him. Now, he was seeing his marriage to her starting to slip away. Well, where is this proxy peerage of yours, Rias? Show them to me so that I can see the weak trash I will dispose of and secure our marriage. He ordered. Rias said nothing and simply placed her finger on the summoning tag on her desk, pouring some magic into it and causing it to light up a bright violet. Taking the tag, she carried it over to the empty chair and set it down just in time for Naruto to arrive in a burst of blue wisps, hands clasped on the hilt of his sword like a cane and eyes closed as he took a breath. Graphia N. Oted the sword and the feeling of darkness that came from it, and her silver eyes widened by a fraction at the sheathed weapon in the newcomer's possession. When he opened his eyes, she saw a wells pre-ing of power hidden behind those crystalline orbs, power so reminiscent of theirs that she forced herself to hold her tongue and keep quiet. It can't be, she thought to herself in slight shock. Those E2 died 20 years ago and neither of them were reported to have sired children. Locking eyes with the Phoenix, Naruto hummed thoughtfully with a raised brow. So, this is who I'll be facing for you, Rias? He asked, aloud. For a child of a noble house, I'm not impressed. Who are you to speak to me like that, lesser born? Riser questioned angrily. I can tell right away that you're no pureblood. Which makes you unworthy to face me in my eyes. Ah, but the choice isn't up to you now, is it? The Uzumaki asked with a knowing smirk. I'm here on behalf of Rias, and it's by her will that I am to face you as her proxy. You have no say in the matter. Why, you worthless upstart? Ignoring his future opponent, Naruto turned to Graphia and gave her a respectful nod in greeting. Queen of Lucifer, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I am a devil in possession of a full-set peerage, and I have accepted the responsibility of acting as Rias Grimori's proxy. Please inform those of proper authority of Rias's decision and my acceptance. He requested courteously. Graphia had to admit that, despite never hearing of an Uzumaki devil family, the young man before her carried himself proudly, but as not so arrogant as to speak to her with disrespect. Although, if he is a descendant of one of them, I believe I know who the father is, she mused while outwardly giving the whiskered blonde a nod in return. I will be sure to do so. Uzumaki-san. As per the contract, 10 days will be allowed for both peerages to prepare for the raiding game. Please arrive back here at the end of those 10 days. So that I may escort your peerage and Rias-sama's peerage to the netherworld. I will arrive on time, ma'am, he assured her before turning to Riser with a cold smirk. I'll see you on the field, Phoenix. Come then, we'll settle the matter. Quote. Giving Rias a nod in farewell, Naruto walked towards a random wall and unsheathed his sword. Everyone watched curiously before they were left stunned when he swung downwards and then across, creating visible cuts in space itself that opened up to reveal a dark corridor as he sheathed his weapon. He then casually stepped into the darkness as the cuts in SP. Ace closed behind him and restored themselves. Holy shit, Issei summarized for the group. No mistaking it, Graphia thought with a frown. That was the Yamato, one of the swords of Sparta. But how did he acquire it? And how is he able to use it without succumbing to its power? With those questions kept in the back of her mind, Graphia stayed until Riser left before turning to her king's younger sister. Rias-sama, how did you meet Uzumaki-san? He just showed up one day in disguise, Rias answered. Disguise? She repeated with a faint frown. It was just a trick to get mine and Sona's attention so that he could show us where those fallen angels from before were stationed. He then had a single member of his peerage incapacitate all of the fallen and the rogue priests working for them, capture them for Azazel, and rescue Asia from them. It was his bishop, I believe. Yes, it was his bishop, Rias, Akino confirmed. What was your first impression of him? Graphia continued questioning. Well, The first impression we all got from him was a suffocating weight of power that left the humans at Kuo Academy practically catatonic while we struggled just to get to him. He presented himself as a disguised man with cracked skin, but he still managed to hold us all back with little effort, Rias explained, frowning at how outclassed she and Sona were that day. And his peerage. He said he had a full set like Riser. Quote, he does, Graphia-sama, Akino answered her. However, the peerage itself has the bare minimum number of members while using all evil pieces. Interesting, the maid devil mused. And what was your impression of them as a whole? Do you think they're up to the task? Thinking back on the conversation between Naruto, Sona, and herself, Rias recalled how Naruto had told her and Sona about the Shadow Wars that his peerage took part in, wars that the two heiresses were left blissfully unaware of. Nodding firmly, she answered, yes, I know they are. As much as I hate admitting it. His peerage outclasses mine, despite neither of our peerages having any experience in raiding games. Graphia nodded once in understanding. Very well. I'll relay your decies. Ion and Uzumaki-san's acceptance to Lords Grimoire and Phoenix. They created this contract and all of the loopholes it has within. So, they will not be able to contest your choice to use a proxy peerage. Smiling, Rias replied, tell them that I'm looking forward to being free of this contract. I'll pass on your message, Rias-sama. I will see you in Uzumaki-san in 10 days. With that, Lucifer's queen left the orc, and for Rias. These next 10 days would bring forth a building anxiety. But also, a rising hope. Sipping on some scotch, Naruto looked to his peerage as he finished relaying how the meeting had gone. So, that's it. We'll meet Graphia at Grimoire's clubroom in 10 days for the raiding game. Use this time to try and get whatever information you can on the chalice. I want that to become priority after the raiding game. Can do, Whiskers. Medalia assured him before nudging Rossweisse, who immediately blushed. And Valkyrie girl Tilda, who knew you had it in ya. Scoring with Whiskers last night. Rossweisse looked like she wanted to sink into the floor as her fellow peerage members gave her amused looks. It didn't help that Naruto turned away to hide his own blush and focus on his drink. So Tilda, does this mean it's open season? Yoruichi asked eagerly, her yellow orbs gleaming. I'd say so, Tifa agreed. Ross went first, after all. It's only fair that we all have our chance too. Especially with the pointy-ear queen on the prowl, Medalia added, Neo nodding in agreement with a pout. As one, the 5 members of Naruto's peerage turned towards their king, only to see an empty barstool and the doors to the bar swinging back and forth. Oi, get back here, ya damn coward, and take your lumps like a man, Medalia shouted as she chased after him, followed closely by a laughing Yoruichi and smirking Neo. Left alone with Tifa, Rossweisse finally spoke up. Tifa, no need for that, Ross. You knew him longer than any of us, save for Medalia. When I joined, I can tell how much you'd grown to love him. And I didn't want to come between you before you had a chance. Admittedly, when I heard that we all could share him, it was harder for me to resist, which is why I kissed him back then. Still, you expressed your love for him first. You should have had that moment before me. Nah, I don't mind waiting. Despite how dense he is, I know that Naruto loves us all. He wouldn't want us stressing over who gets what with him first. As long as we're happy with him, he'll be more than happy with us. Sharing a smile with Naruto's Rook, the queen nodded in agreement. That's true, I've never been happier, actually. I'll bet. You'll have to give me the details, Tilda. Tifa told her with a wink. Poor Rossweisse was left blushing a brilliant red with an embarrassed squeak. Truly? Questioned the head of the Grimoire household, Zeoticus, after Graphia had delivered her report. I never expected Rias to step aside and allow another peerage to fight in her place. She must have studied the contract thoroughly to find such a loophole, the lady of the house, Venelana, commented. What was the name of the king of the peerage, Graphia? He introduced himself as Naruto Uzumaki, Lady Grimoire. The queen of Lucifer replied. If I may speak freely. At their nods, she continued, I believe that he will stand a solid chance against Lord Riser. Uzumaki, Zeoticus repeated thoughtfully. I don't recall hearing such a surname before. Perhaps Seraphol would know. Venelana suggested. She is in charge of foreign affairs for the devils, after all. Raps, we'll run it by Searsex to ask her about it when he comes by for dinner. In any case, what makes you so willing to believe in Uzumaki's potential against Riser, Grafia? Grafia took a small breath before answering. Because he wields the Yamato. Silence reigned supreme in the room, with both Lord and Lady Grimori being stunned at the reveal. You're sure of this? Venelana asked for confirmation. It was a katana-styled weapon that Uzumaki used to cut through space itself, creating a dark portal that he departed through after the meeting between Lady Rias and Lord Riser. I also felt the dark power emanating from the weapon, which makes me strongly believe it is the genuine sword. The Yamato, I thought Ajuka had the broken blade in his possession. Zeodicus mused aloud, stroking his goatee in thought. If it truly is the Yamato, then how could Uzumaki use it so skillfully? The sword was created and wielded by Sparta himself. He may be able to use it because he may, in fact, be a descendant of Lord Sparta. Grafia suggested. While he lacks the distinct silver hair of Sparta and his sons, Uzumaki's demonic power was kept under tight control. Tell me, Grafia, Venelana spoke up. What did Uzumaki look like? He appeared slightly older than Lady Rias, had bright blue eyes that held impressive power behind their gaze, golden blonde hair similar to the Phoenix house, and whisker markings on his cheeks that could represent a Kitsune bloodline. If Uzumaki is truly a descendant of Sparta, then the bloodline has been greatly diluted since Lords Dante and Virgil were both half-breeds. A Sparta with Kitsune blood. Lady Grimori repeated, her eyes widening by a fraction. Perhaps he is distantly related to Lady Yusaka of the yokai. Zeodicus looked intrigued by the idea. Maybe so, Grafia. Please send a request for Serafal to come see us. This cannot wait until dinner. I will send a message at once, Lord Grimori, the Silverette maid declared with a bow before she departed to fulfill the order. As she left, she thought, a potential son of Lord Virgil, and he's offered to take Lady Rias's place in the raiding game. Perhaps he seeks to announce himself to the netherworld during the event. Strike harder, Rainer. Naruto ordered, using his mirage edge to parry and guard against a light spear wielded by the fallen angel. He deflected another lunge, spinning with the force so that he could land a backhanded fist to her back and send her stumbling forward. Don't sacrifice footing for a hit. Loss of balance has killed stronger people than you. Yes, Naruto-sama, panted out Rainer, taking her stance again as sweat flowed down her face. She had been sparring against him for roughly an hour now, and it had taken its toll on her. Sparring was a nice way of putting it. It was more like trying to chip away at a wall of diamond with a plastic knife. 5 minutes have passed. Tifa called out from the sidelines. The announcement had the effect of making Rainer tense before. With a grunt of effort, she leapt away from a continuous rain of spectral blades that stabbed into the ground where she once was. She kept moving, dismissing light spear in exchange for smaller shots of tainted light that she fired at Naruto between evasions. Naruto used his mirage blade to casually bat away the tainted light. The goal wasn't for Rainer to hit him, but to fire shots that wouldn't become dispelled after coming in contact with his spectral weapon. The fact that they were deflected instead of dispersed showed impressive growth in her usage of her tainted light. All right, that's enough, he called out, halting his projectile assault on Rainer, who dropped to the ground in exhaustion. You've improved, the whiskered devil praised, earning an enervated smile from the fallen angel. We'll continue this in about a day or two. Time to head out, Tifa asked, approaching them and offering Rainer some water that she graciously accepted. Nodding, Naruto replied, Yoruichi told me that this would be the best time to visit. I should be back either tomorrow or the day following. I'll let the others know. Are you going alone? Quote, only Yoruichi or I would be welcome there, and it would be a grudging welcome at that. Best for me to go alone while Yoruichi keeps in touch with Anna. We still need to know what Saros is after other than the Chalice of Beginnings. If she's potentially targeting other relics from various pantheons, then I want to know what her endgame is. Tifa nodded once in understanding before she stepped close to Naruto and kissed his whiskered cheek. Be safe, Naruto. I know that you're relatively welcome there, but still. He gave her a reassuring smile. I'll be fine. Tell the others I'll be back soon. Of course. His Rook replied as she watched him cut upon a portal with the Yamato before departing. Rainer, who had respectfully remained silent so that she could catch her breath and hydrate, asked, "Where's he going?" "He has business with Lady Yusaka in Kyoto." "Wait, you mean the leader of the yokai? That Yusaka?" The fallen clarified in shock. Smirking, the gorgeous bar owner replied, "The very same." Stepping out of the portal he had made, Naruto found himself just at the edge of Kyoto's border as he sheathed the Yamato and closed the cuts in space. With a faint smile, he made his way through the central hub of the yokai and for the home of Yusaka, their leader and a Kyuubi kitsune. He had the same tattered brown cloak over his form that he wore when he had first met Rias and Sona. Not wanting to be recognized right away until he reached Yusaka's home. As he passed by various yokai and the humans that lived harmoniously amongst them, he felt vague memories swim through his mind of a time before he met Lizarote in the netherworld. Memories involving a gentle smile, loving warmth, and red hair. Shaking away those thoughts, he had made it to the home of Yusaka and approached the guards. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," he greeted. "I have a meeting with Lady Yusaka." One of the guards, a male Tengu, questioned, "Name?" "Naruto Uzumaki." The other, a female Surugami, looked surprised before she quickly pulled out a notepad and read through the list. Seeing Naruto's name, she nodded to her partner. "He's expected." "Very well, Uzumaki-sama," the Tengu stated. "Please wait here for an escort." "Of course." Naruto acquiesced, waiting patiently while hiding his discomfort. He wasn't one for such respectful honorifics. Not long after, a young maid with pale blue skin, pointed ears, and visible stitch marks on her exposed skin approached the gates and bowed to him. "Greetings to you, Uzumaki-sama. If you would follow me, I will escort you to Lady Yusaka." "One. After you," he replied, following her lead as she guided him through the traditional Japanese-styled home. "Might I know the name of my escort?" "This one is named Ikika, Uzumaki-sama." "Nice to meet you, Ikika-san. I assure you, the honor is mine, Uzumaki-sama," she replied before stopping outside a pair of doors. "This is Lady Yusaka's personal office." Knocking once, she waited for her mistress's voice to ask for identification. "It's Ikika, Lady Yusaka. I have Naruto Uzumaki-sama with me." "He may enter," Yusaka stated through the door. "My lady will see you now. I hope your meeting with her goes well, Uzumaki-sama." "Thank you, Ikika. And for the future, please just call me Naruto," he bid the maid before he opened the doors and stepped into the Kyuubi's office, ignoring her stuttered response. Getting up from her desk was a kitsune yokai who had the appearance of a young woman blessed with a voluptuous figure and very long blonde hair with matching eyes. She was a woman with delicate facial features and her eyebrows were cut very short and round as a symbol of nobility. Her hair was currently tied in a loose ponytail, reaching all the way down to her legs and ended in a spiral, with taut bandages to keep it in place. For attire, she was garbed in a traditional shrine maiden outfit, and over that she wore a white coat held closed by a red ribbon while a golden crown rested atop her head. She graced him with a beautiful smile and closed the distance enough to embrace him warmly. "Oh, I've missed you, Kit." Despite the rather demeaning label, Naruto hugged her back with a smile. "Must you call me that?" Pulling away, she gave him an innocent smile and replied, "Am I wrong?" Rolling his eyes, he let her guide him to a small couch that was meant for guests and visitors. Instead of sitting across from him, Yusaka sat beside the whiskered devil and held his arm in hers while leaning her head upon his shoulder. "Still clingy, are we?" he teased, earning a light slap to his shoulder as Yusaka pulled away. "Hush, you. I haven't seen you for over a year, so, you'll excuse me for wanting to be close to my darling nephew." He chuckled at that. "I missed you too, auntie," he replied gently, earning a smile from her before she pouted at his hair. "What? Dear, as much as I love seeing your hair matching mine and Kuno's, I'd rather see you in your natural state." Naruto closed his eyes and turned away. "My natural state was too weak, I'd rather wear this false image." Yusaka dropped her pout for a sympathetic gaze, gently cupping her nephew's chin so that she could have him face her. "I know it's hard, but you can't keep blaming yourself for what happened. You were young. My youth doesn't excuse not being able to save her. It does when that youth shows your inexperience. You couldn't have anticipated that Lizarote would be taken away, or that the devil watching over Shoal was scum," she assured him, growling out the insult. Can we change the subject, please? He whispered. Still looking sympathetic, Yusaka nodded with a gentle smile. Of course. Besides, I'm expecting a report from you, after all. Naruto nodded and replied, the hires. S's of Grimoire and Citri are too coddled to be truly ready for the responsibilities of governing a city. They had fallen angels staying at an abandoned church, and they refused to act until a human was targeted by them and killed. Which allowed for Grimoire to revive him into her peerage. She used their presence to her benefit, and I doubt she informed Citri of her plans until after the fact. Frowning, Yusaka nodded in understanding. I see. Have the fallen been taken care of? Yes, I had Medalia handle them and foil their attempts of stealing the twilight healing from an excommunicated nun of the Vatican. I made a deal with Azazel, and one of the fallen is in my custody as a sort of prisoner of war. She's more of a vassal, though. Interesting. I assume he gave her to you in exchange for you not making this into an incident. Quote, more or less. He's assured me that he'll be paying closer attention to his subordinates, specifically, Kokobile. That warmonger is still alive. Wonderful, she muttered with a small groan. Rainer, the fallen I've taken into my custody, revealed that it was Kokobile who gave her and her associates the order to kill the human revived by Grimoire, as well as the order to steal the twilight healing. Medalia also reported that a squad of rogue priests were assisting the fallen, and that she killed a rather mouthy one that introduced himself as Fried Selzen. Well, I doubt you really care for the lives of rogues of the church. Yusaka gained a teasing smile as she added, unless they were rogues from Fortuna, anyway. He chuckled at the teasing. I still find it amazing how a city worshipped Sparta as the savior. Your grandfather was surprisingly righteous for a devil. He married a priestess and fathered your father and uncle, after all. Naruto had a wistful smile as he replied. True, I still wish I could have met them. I heard my grandfather was a devil unlike any other, and grandmother was as beautiful as she was compassionate. I never had the pleasure of meeting them. But I wish it was Sparta who was leading the devils instead of the four Satans. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate their efforts towards peace, but they lack the influence and respect that Sparta had in his prime. Even Dante and your father were respected more than them, if not feared for their power, despite being half-breeds. Yeah, if only father and Uncle C. would have worked together instead of fight all the time, they would have been great for our race. Well, at least Kushina helped Virgil relax enough for him to genuinely love her. If she hadn't, I doubt I'd be talking with you now, Yusaka mused, gently grasping at a necklace that had a locket on it. Opening it, she tearfully smiled at the picture of her younger self and a red-headed kitsune girl with her vixen ears proudly on display. I miss her so much. Hugging an arm around her shoulders and pulling her close, Naruto whispered through his own building tears, I do too, auntie, I do. Too. Uzumaki. Seraphol repeated with interest, giving a sideways glance to her servant. The stunned look on the poor girl's face concerned the Leviathan Satan, but she would wait to speak with her until later. Yes, Zeodicus confirmed. He volunteered to take Rias's place in her raiding game, and Venelana and I don't recall any devil families bearing that surname. We were hoping you could tell us if you recognize the name from other places. Lady Grimoire continued. You might have heard the name during your duties with foreign affairs. Seraphol frowned faintly and nodded. Normally, she'd be her usual bubbly self. However, this meeting required her to be more serious so that she could emphasize the importance of her answer. I have, and I'm a bit surprised that you both don't recall the name. Uzumaki is the family name of Lady Yusaka of the yokai. Come again. Zeodicus muttered in shock. Yusaka Uzumaki, the leader of the yokai, mother of Kuno Uzumaki, elder sister of the late Kushina Uzumaki. And the eldest child of the previous yokai leader, Kurama Uzumaki, informed Seraphol. Naruto shares their family name. Graphia and Searsex, who had arrived not long before his fellow Satan, were just as surprised as the lord and lady of House Grimoire. They had honestly never heard of the family name of Yusaka, so hearing that the devil acting as a proxy for Rias shared their name was understandably shocking. Searsex composed himself first and asked, could he just be using the name to avoid suspicion? Seraphol shook her head at his question, giving another side glance to her servant. Her hands were clenched together at her waist in a resting position, and she was trying hard not to react. Sarafal knew she was dying to say something but was keeping silent because it wasn't her place to speak. Based on her reactions, this must be the same Naruto that she told me about before, mused the Leviathan before addressing the others. There were rumors that, before her passing, Kushina was pregnant with a child and was seen in the company of a young boy in Kyoto. These were never truly confirmed, but I'm sure that this Naruto is her rumored son. But the young man was reportedly blonde, Venelana replied. Didn't Lady Kushina have red hair similar to the Grimoire family? That's what the rumors say, Sarafal answered, neither confirming nor denying her question. If this young man is related to the yokai leader and has the ability to wield the Yamato without repercussion, then his pedigree is phenomenal, Searsex noted in slight amazement. He would be carrying the bloodline of the most powerful Kyuubi in recent history as well as the blood of Sparta. The amount of power at his disposal could easily reach that of a super devil with the proper training and development. Sarafal noted that her servant was smiling softly at Searsex's assessment. She found herself smiling as well, happy to see her servant not looking so worried and instead being proud. If a hybrid such as him truly existed, Venelana spoke up, why would he wait until now to reveal himself? Perhaps he was made aware of what such a pedigree would mean in terms of temptation, Lady Grimoire, Graphia suggested. After all, a child with the blood of a Kyuubi in Sparta would be a target for abduction, for killing, or for use. The influence of his bloodlines would be substantial compared to most. A valid suggestion. Graphia, Zeodicus agreed. At any rate, we shall keep these theories to ourselves until this young man chooses to reveal himself. After all, what better way to announce the return of the Sparta bloodline than during an event as notable as a raiding game between two influential houses? The others nodded in understanding, agreeing to keep their silence on the matter. With the meeting over with, Sarafal left with her servant and arrived in her personal study. Upon arrival, she was engulfed in a tearful hug by said servant and smiled softly as she hugged her back. He's alive, choked out the servant through her tears. I was so scared that he had died. I know, soothed Sarafal, rubbing her back in comfort. She then pulled back and offered the young woman a tissue, which she accepted with thanks. All you have to do now is just wait until the raiding game. Then you'll be able to see him again. Sniffling as she dried her tears, the young servant nodded exuberantly at her mistress. The servant in question was dressed in a maid's uniform like Graphia, though hers was black compared to Graphia's blue uniform. She had pointed ears and long, golden blonde hair that reached below her posterior and was held together by the maid headpiece. Her golden eyes conveyed her anticipation while her lion-like tail slowly swayed in her joy. I doubt I can wait that long, Lady Sarafal, she confessed with a smile. Just be patient, Lise. When the time comes, you'll be reunited with your dear brother. I promise you. She then did a twirl and struck a magi cowgirl pose that made Liserota giggle. Ah, yeah tilde. A long-awaited reunion between families separated by tragic events. I bet I can use that as inspiration for my show. Liserota could only shake her head in amusement at her king's antics. However, as both her bishop and her friend, she would support Sarafal. It was thanks to her that this future reunion would be possible, after all. Sharing some tea with Yusaka, Naruto took some time to enjoy the peaceful air of Kyoto. Here, he was able to put aside his worries about future jobs and simply relax. Even when he was spending time with his peerage, those worries lingered in the back of his mind. There was something about this place that made those worries seem like a distant memory. He perked up at the sound of rushing footsteps and looked to Yusaka, who wore an amused smile on her face. You really thought she wouldn't know you were here? I thought she'd be here sooner, to be honest, he joked back as he stood from his seat. It was well timed, as the doors were thrown open and a golden-haired bundle crashed into his chest and sent him falling to the floor on his back. Despite preparing himself for it, he still groaned at the tackle as he looked to the culprit. It was a young girl with matching features to Yusaka, complete with her own shrine maiden clothing. She was smiling brightly at Naruto as her 9 tails waved happily and her vixen ears were perked up in delight. Gotcha, Naru-ni, she cheered before nuzzling his chest with a purr. Kuno, Naruto greeted, gently patting the young princess of the yokai on the head. You mind letting me up, now? Quote, not until I get my snuggles. The whiskered hybrid sweat dropped at that while Yusaka giggled at her daughter's antics. Sweetheart, let him at least sit back down on his chair. You can snuggle in his lap. Kuno pouted at her mother, but she still relented and got off Naruto so that he could retake his seat. As soon as his butt rested on the chair, she leapt into his lap and snuggled against him once more, purring softly the whole time. You've gotten so big, he commented. Pretty soon, you'll be just as beautiful as Auntie. Kuno pouted at him and retorted, I'm cuter than Mama. Though, Yusaka fought a snort at that, finding her daughter's jealousy more adorable than anything else. Besides, Mama's getting gray hairs. A tick mark formed on Yusaka's head. Despite her serene smile, my, who would have thought I'd raise such a rude child? Perhaps she should leave before she insults my guest. Kuno's eyes widened at that, and she quickly apologized, I didn't mean it, Mama. You're the prettiest. Don't take me from Naru. Damn right, I'm the prettiest, the supposedly infallible woman grumbled under her breath, much to Naruto's amusement. Speaking normally, she continued, I suppose you can stay, then. Just keep such commentary to yourself. Yes, Mama. The elder Kitsune nodded before turning to her nephew. So, how long will you be staying? Not for long. Unfortunately, he answered. I have obligations to fulfill, the nearest one being a little over a week from now. And what will this obligation be? My peerage. And I will be helping the Grimoire heiress with her marriage contract with the youngest son of the Phoenix family. I'll be owed a favor from her family for my actions. I see, and I assume that favor will be used to aid in your search. Naruto nodded solemnly, which prompted Kuno to hug him tightly in hopes of comforting him. He rubbed her head in thanks before replying, finding Lise has always been my highest priority, Auntie. You know this. I do, but don't forget that you're always welcome here in Kyoto. Grandfather would disagree, Kuno whispered, earning a slightly reprimanding look from her mother. I will speak with him should you wish to settle down here, Naruto, Yusaka assured her nephew. Thanks, but I don't want to cause trouble. Besides, I think he'd rather I proved myself to him than have you vouch for me. He's a prideful bastard. My father is complicated, Naruto, his aunt tried to explain. He had high expectations and hopes for Kushina and I, but those hopes weren't what he got. And he's rather bitter about it. Snorting, Naruto groused, yeah, he wanted Mom to keep the bloodline pure and was furious that I was born a mutt. Yusaka and Kuno both winced at that, knowing that was exactly what Kurama believed. Sighing, Naruto calmed himself and continued, at any rate, I can stay for the night, but I'll need to leave by morning. Of course, Yusaka replied with a gentle smile. Why don't I have the chefs prepare us some ramen for dinner? If you're anything like Kushina, you'll polish off plenty of bowls. Chuckling, Naruto nodded in agreement and spent the evening with his family. The next day, after saying his farewells to Yusaka and Kuno, Naruto returned to Kuo and his peerage. He had promised to inform his aunt how to tune into the raiding game before his departure. As well as promised Kuno that he would bring his peerage with him for his next visit. The girls adored his little cousin, so he was more than happy to bring them along. Despite devils not being totally welcome in yokai territory, Yusaka had given him a bundled package before he left. She had told him that she had it commissioned after his previous visit and had wanted to give it to him for some time. He had accepted it gratefully before departing. Upon returning to Seventh Heaven, Naruto dropped the package off in the bunker beneath the bar before he vanished in a blur, reappearing on the rooftop of a nearby building so that he could survey the town. It wasn't long before the space next to him cracked, shattering apart and revealing Neo. Whatcha got for me? He asked curiously, prompting her to sign her response before handing him a written report. He watched her finish signing before skimming over the report. You mean to tell me that Grimoire hasn't bothered to train her pawn or bishop since accepting my deal? Neo frowned and shook her head. She's squandering the potential of the Red Dragon Emperor. His boosted gear will only do so much if his base power never improves. Zero doubling itself repeatedly is still zero. He sighed in slight frustration, and Neo offered him a wrapped ice pop. Taking it with a nod of thanks, he summoned the Yamato before tossing it in the air. In a flash of violet light, the famed katana had changed into Griffin and Shadow. Blondie, the avian demon greeted while Shadow brushed himself against the whisker. Ed Devil's leg before he decided to lie down beside Neo, who started to scratch his head. Want me to spy on Big Red again? Not so much spy, but rather pass along a message for me, Naruto explained. Before relaying what he wanted to tell Rias. Currently, the Grimoire heiress was looking over records of Riser's previous rating games. While she wasn't going to be facing him, she was hoping to have some information to give Naruto and his peerage when the day of the match came. With her was Akeno, who had prepared her some tea before joining her king in looking over the records. However, she spotted something in the corner of her eye and turned to see a large blue and black bird staring at them from atop a branch overlooking the window. Bushu. The queen spoke up, getting Rias's attention and pointing to the bird. We have a visitor. Rias gave the bird an odd glance before she stood up and moved to open the window. Not long after, the bird flew in and landed on Rias's desk. About time, Red, he griped. You and your sparkplug of a queen took way too long to notice me. No wonder Blondie had to offer to help you. Blondie, Rias repeated curiously. Sparkplug. Akeno muttered with a slightly twitching brow. Do you mean Naruto? The red-headed devil clarified. Nah, you think. Maybe you do get mental nutrition instead of it all going to your chest, Griffin casually insulted. Rias's brow twitched this time. What do you want? Or are you only here to talk down to us? Because if you'd like, I could always have Akeno fry you. Giggling eagerly, Akeno had lightning dance along her fingers. I wonder if you scream ah. Her comment was cut off by her and Rias jumping back as Griffin casually surged out a violent spark from his body. Like I said, Sparkplug, Griffin repeated before turning to Rias. Anyway, I got a message for ya from Blondie. There was no build-up, Rias thought in surprise. He just let loose some electricity without moving a muscle. Outclassed by Naruto that his familiar can catch me by surprise. Not caring about the look of shock on their faces, Griffin continued, just because he's taking your place against the featherless chicken, doesn't mean you can slack off. Red, slack off. She repeated, sounding offended. I've been looking over records of Riser's matches. I haven't been sitting pretty and doing nothing. While you're looking at records that Blondie and his band of misfits can easily obtain, how are your pawn and bishop doing? Rias was brought up short at that question. I'm sure he told you, he and his peerage work in the shadows, Red. That means he has access to all kinds of information, such as records of rating games. Stuff like that is child's play compared to something like, say, the White Dragon Emperor being under the guardianship of fallen angels. Rias and Akeno were stunned at that, knowing that the red and white dragons were destined to clash with each incarnation. If the white dragon was with the fallen, that made him that much more of a threat to Issei. That's not even getting into the fact that Big White has a very interesting bloodline, Griffin added, giving them another juicy morsel of information. So, instead of looking through useless records, why don't you make sure your little wannabe dragon is in tip-top shape? Him and that little nun of yours. With the message delivered, Griffin spread open his wings and flew out the window, vanishing behind the trees surrounding the occult research clubroom. Rias frowned at his departure before sighing tiredly. Damn him. What do you wish to do, Bushu? Akeno asked softly, knowing that her friend's pride had been damaged. The young heiress was silent for a few moments before she stood straight, her blue-green eyes brimming with newfound focus. Turning to her queen, she ordered, gather the others. It's past time that I provided a more personal assistance in their training. Akeno smiled and nodded before ending out a message to the other members of Rias's peerage. It was time to get serious about their future potential. Sona frowned at the sight of a large blue and black bird flying away from Rias's clubroom. She had noticed its arrival earlier and how it was watching the clubroom from a tree outside one of the windows. However, seeing as it wasn't causing trouble and was being rather patient before being noticed by Rias or Akeno, the sea tree heiress decided to have her peerage remain on standby in case anything changed. After it was noticed and allowed inside the clubroom, she kept watch from her vantage point until she saw the bird leave and fly back to the buildings of Kuo. She lost track of it, but she was sure that it didn't cause trouble for Rias. If anything, it was probably just a familiar delivering a message to Rias. If Sona had to guess, the bird was sent by Naruto and was more than likely giving Rias an update on Naruto's preparations for the upcoming match against Riser. Kaichu. Her queen, Tsubaki Shinra, questioned. Stand down, everyone, she ordered. It appears that it was just a messenger for Rias. Yes, ma'am, replied her peerage before they went back to their previous duties. Tsubaki turned to Sona and asked, do you think Uzumaki-san will be able to deal with Lord Riser? All we know, from the meeting you and Lady Rias had with him, is that he's part ICIPATED in hidden skirmishes and believes his peerage to be leagues above us. I spoke to my sister about him not long after the meeting, Sona confessed, earning a surprised look from her queen. Not that Sona could blame her. Since Serafal tended to overreact to anything involving Sona. My sister seemed genuinely surprised at hearing his name, but she didn't say anything other than Uzumaki-san being more than capable of defeating Riser. What do you think makes her so sure of this, Kaichu? She didn't say, but I investigated what I could about him. All I was able to find was a link to his surname. And it's quite possibly the only information I need to agree with my sister's assessment. And that is? Tsubaki asked, sounding both concerned and curious. Sona spoke quietly so that only her queen could hear her. His last name is shared with Lady Yusaka of the yokai. Tsubaki's eyes widened, her expression looking absolutely stunned at the reveal. Then that would mean Naruto-san is related to the Kyuubi of Kyoto, the Cetri heiress finished firmly. Based on that, I must agree with my sister's evaluation. Naruto and his peerage will be more than capable of dealing with Riser's peerage. It also explains the total confidence Naruto-san had when he made his offer to Rias, even promising that she would owe him nothing if he happened to fail. I see, with that kind of bloodline. It makes sense why he had such an incredible presence. Indeed. After the time before the raiding game passed, Naruto and his peerage were seen standing outside the occult research clubroom. All but Naruto and Rossweisse were dressed in their usual attire. Rossweisse had forewent her more business-associated outfit and instead was in her armor she wore as a Valkyrie, which left Rias's peerage stunned that Naruto's queen was from the Norse pantheon. The armor consisted of a white breastplate with gold and pale blue accents and matching fingerless gauntlets, boots, hip guards, and wing-shaped hair clips. She sported a black leotard underneath her breastplate, black thigh-high stockings, and a pale blue cloth wrapped underneath her hip guards, all of which were clad with pink lacing along with her hair clips. She looked like a true warrior maiden, and Naruto smirked in nostalgia of their first meeting. As for Naruto, he wore an updated version of his previous outfit. It was practically the same except for some changes. The once neon blue highlights of the outfit had become a silvery white coloration, the midnight blue vest was a storm gray shade, and the back of his coat sported a stylized demonic skull that was the same silvery white, with the teeth of the skull having beastly fangs. Looking to Graphia, Naruto dipped his head slightly in greeting, which she matched respectfully. We're ready when you are, Queen of Lucifer. Very well. Is there anything you need before we depart, Lord Uzumaki? She asked politely. Lord, he mused before answering, just how to tune into the match. I have a couple of interested parties who would like to spectate this event. Lady Yusaka would fall in that category, Graphia noted in her head. But who else would he wish to have spectate? Not giving away any of her thoughts, Graphia explained the process to Naruto, who shared a look with Metallia. The swamp witch smirked at him and sent the necessary instructions to Yusaka and Olga, who had requested for Naruto to allow her and Chloe to watch his match. She said that she wanted to see her favorite devil's grand debut in the netherworld. If that is all, I shall escort us to the waiting venue, Graphia declared, summoning a magic circle with the Grimoire family insignia decorating the center. In a brilliant flash, everyone had disappeared from the Man realm and reappeared in a large lounge room with plenty of seating, and even a small bar. The match will begin shortly. I will check if Lord Riser is ready to begin. Will Graphia leaving everyone? Naruto looked to Tifa with a faint smirk. Think they have decent scotch? She smirked back and went behind the bar to check. Meanwhile, Rias approached him and gave a small bow to him. Thank you again for this. No need for thanks. Rias, we made a deal, after all. This is simply business. Even so, I'm glad you offered your services to me. If you hadn't, I doubt we would have won. Oh, You would have lost. He shot down without sparing any of her feelings, which made Rias wince. Your peerage wouldn't have been able to gain the necessary skills to face a full roster peerage in just 10 days. You didn't have to be so blunt about it, she grumbled with a pout and crossed arms, which made him smirk. I know, but seeing you acting like such a Haim-sama is decently entertaining. Despite his taunting, Rias smiled back at him as Tifa came back with a shaking head. Nothing you'd like, Naruto, she informed him. Damn, was hoping for a decent drink for the game starts, he said with a sigh as Grafia returned. The rating game will begin now, she informed him. Very well, ladies. Naruto addressed his peerage, who smirked back at him. With his blue eyes turning a demonic red with a vulpine slit for a pupil, he gave a grin that showed off his fangs and declared, let's have some fun. Thanks for watching.